Greetings traveler, I am Akira, a representative of the Twilight Society and the curator of these tales. Today, we will embark on a journey which is reborn in Genshin Impact Part 1. As always, if you want to support the creator of these works, their Patreon and story link will be in the description. Now, without further ado, buckle up and enjoy the story.
Chapter 1, A New Chance. Yomite His Shah, welcome to the afterlife. Unfortunately, your story has come to an end, as you've died. It might have been short, but your life's now over. You've died at an age of 25 in an elevator accident. Someone suddenly spoke to him. Elevator accidents are pretty rare, but they do still happen. The company you were working for didn't have a repair check in years, so it was bound to happen, eventually. Yomite wasn't even able to register what was happening. He had no sense of reality, and felt like he was floating inside of a dream. Everything was fuzzy and confusing. The best way to describe it would be as if you were drunk and close to throwing up, but at the same time, felt completely at ease. Out of nowhere, he found himself in this pure white room, feeling nothing but calmness and a sense of relief, as if the weight of his sins from the past 25 years fell on the ground from his shoulders. Well, in reality, it was his body that disappeared. That's why he felt so light. All that was left was his soul, the remnant of his being. He could still see and feel though, which was convenient. The sudden turn of events still confused him. Why was he here? Will he go to hell or heaven after his death? Is purgatory real? Trying to ignore the scary thoughts, he glanced around the spatial astral place he was in. The ceiling was made of what resembled a galaxy of some kind. It definitely wasn't the Milky Way. He didn't know why, he just got the feeling it wasn't. The galaxy was covered with white fluffy clouds, and he had to admit it looked incredibly cool. In the wide white room was an office desk and a red throne, covered with ruby stones. The one who announced that his life was over sat on the said throne. He looked at the young woman who was sitting on the majestic throne and noticed she held something in her hands. It was a book. From the book's cover, it appeared to be a fantasy novel. One of Yomite's many favorite genres. It was hard to ignore her appearance. If there was a goddess, she had to be it. She had long, silky smooth black hair. She seemed to be a teenager, but as it was a divine entity, her age probably couldn't be measured. Her chest was flat, but flat boobs deserved some loving as well. Her beauty was beyond the idols shown on television. She had a glamour that surpassed humans. He had dated quite a few women in his life, yet none were even close to her in looks. I'm just an astral being. I have no gender, so you don't need to be excited. The woman spoke as if she was able to read his thoughts. I see. Yomite tried to compose himself, but the sole thought that she could probably read his mind was unsettling. The beauty blinked her eyes, which were the same black color as her hair, and stared at him as he tried to figure out what was going on. Mysteriously calm, he asked the beauty before him. May I ask you something? The beauty nodded in response to his question. Please go ahead. While not breaking the line of sight with the book she was reading, she said she has no gender, but let's refer to this being as a she for now, so that it won't be that confusing. Yomite thought. He opened his mouth and asked, What you said just now, that I've died, is that true? I only faintly remember it, but it feels as if those memories weren't even mine. I have no reason to lie. You did in fact die. It was quite the spectacle. All of your insides were splattered. Just try to think about it. Sometimes it takes a bit of time for the soul to regain its memories after the death. She flipped to another page of her book and continued reading. Yomite put his hands on his head, but they slipped through, catching nothing. Left with nothing but the soul, he delved deeper into his memories and thought about what happened a few moments ago. He was a reviewer in a publishing company. The area of his expertise was books and novels. Some fanfics too, but that rarely happened, as it was almost impossible to see fanfic outshine an original story. But there were instances of few fanfics getting contracts, although they had to be good enough. He was about to bring his boss a new outlet of original stories that arrived from new promising authors like Mad Snail and Xian Foam. He could feel their potential in his bones. While their novels were about overpowered protagonists, he felt like they had potential as the balance between comedy, fight scenes, and overall accomplishment of those characters was perfect. Moreover, there were many fans of genres like overpowered protagonist, harem, comedy, and weak to strong. Face slapping was really popular too. After everything was said and done, he successfully signed a contract with them and was happy to deliver the news to his boss. But during an elevator ride, something happened to the engine, and the elevator car malfunctioned. It fell from floor 8 directly to floor 1, instantly crushing him inside. The building had been cited for an elevator problem in May, and the employees said the elevators had previously malfunctioned, yet no one bothered to do anything about it. He was quite unfortunate, as the odds of being killed by an elevator are about 1 in 10 million, according to insurance companies. You're more likely to be killed by a bear. And it's nearly 10 times more likely you'll die in your bathtub. Yet the poor man died the way he did. Yomite his Shah, your job was to review books, is that correct? Yomite absent-mindedly nodded and replied, "That's right. I've been doing it for over 10 years at this point." "Magnificent! Could I ask you for a favor? Would you hear out the ending of my story and give me some professional feedback? I would greatly appreciate it." The woman's innocent gaze pierced into him, and he couldn't help but agree. "It's fine, I guess. I don't mind. It's not like I have anything else to do after dying anyway." "Great! That's the spirit!" The woman was overjoyed. There was something in it for him as well. Maybe if it was good and he gave her a good review, she would send him to heaven instead of hell. That would be nice. "That's great. Well then, Dash." She got comfortable in her seat and began. The aura around her immediately changed from a kid fooling around to something akin to a serious teacher. Yomite couldn't help but appreciate the sight. He found it really charming when someone dedicated their attention to reading a book without regard for what other people think. The young goddess sat on her crimson throne, toying with the ends of her black hair while holding the book. Her skin was as white as pearls, and despite having no gender, it was hard to believe that the being in front of him wasn't actually a woman. The color of the book she was holding was cyan, emitting some kind of divine light with her every touch. Her slender fingers slid across the book frame as she gently turned the page. A boy and a girl stood amidst the atmosphere, under an unfamiliar sky. They were a pair of traveling twins, passing through countless worlds during their journey. Descending upon a continent named Teyvat, they planned on moving away, but the scenery left them captivated. Out of all the worlds they have seen, none were this beautiful. But as if on purpose, the scenery soon changed into that of blazing hell, as they saw the world turn into turmoil. A cataclysm was raging across the land, turning the beautiful scenery into a scene of carnage. Afraid they will get caught up in all of this, the twins wanted to quickly leave the world, but unfortunately for them, an unknown god crossed paths with them and confronted them. She took away one of the twins, filling his mind with nightmares and corrupting him, successfully turning him into her puppet while she killed the other one. The world was ending, every resident dying, every insect suffering, every animal awaited its end in anguish. The end. The goddess closed the book in her hands and gazed at the person standing in front of her. A sad but satisfying end, wasn't it? Well, what to say? As a premise, this would have piqued my interest as it shows plenty of potential, but to call that an ending would be an insult. The goddess narrowed her eyes and smiled. Is that so? Please elaborate. Well, first of all, you didn't let me immerse myself into the story. I barely know these characters, and you already ended it by killing them off? Who does that? Why should I care if some random character from some random novel dies? I have no emotional attachment towards those people or that particular book at all. Moreover, the ending was shit. There was no mention of an epic fight that could have taken place, or the aftermath of things or anything. Just the end isn't enough to explain who those twins were, who the unknown god was, what their purpose was, why they traveled the worlds, literally nothing. There is so much space for improvement, it's making me go insane. The man was outraged and experienced in reviewing as he was doing it for years. He didn't hold his tongue despite being in front of a godlike entity that could end him with a simple thought. I see. So you are saying that in order for you to feel the flow of the story, the soul of the story itself has to be better interpreted, explained, and has to have a proper ending? Exactly. I mean, what you were reading wasn't even an ending. It felt more like a description or synopsis. It was too short to be one anyway, and the ending wasn't satisfying at all. It was as if I was reading Domestic no Kanojo all over again. It doesn't have to be a happy ending. It can be tragic, but at least give it some depth and explanations. That's all I am asking for. The goddess smirked at his remarks. Thank you very much for the feedback. I can work with that. In that case, I will use you. Huh? What was that? If it's you, then maybe going there would be better for you instead of going to Gridania. Excuse me, what are you exactly murmuring under your breath, Goddess Sama? Gridania? Did I hear you correctly? Oh, nothing. In any case, don't call me a goddess, I'm not one anymore. I'm just a remnant of a fallen entity. She gracefully reopened the book on the last page. She shuffled around her pockets and pulled out an eraser. She then placed the eraser on the paper, and the moment she did, the text on the page was magically erased, as if none of that ever happened. Then, what about this? She giggled, full of excitement. The unknown god took away one of the twins and didn't manage to kill the second one due to the fallen entity's intervention, sealing her away into a deep slumber, and once she awoke, the world has changed. The flames of war raged no longer, and nothing was left that looked familiar. Now, the story is just beginning, the journey to find her brother and to defeat the unknown god. The story inside of Teyvat. She jumped down from her throne and walked towards Yomite while holding the book. How's that sound? The ending was altered. Yomite thought for a while before replying. Well, it was definitely handled better than before, although I would need to read the entire thing, and until then, I can't give you a good review. So far, it was only average at best, maybe less than an average fantasy novel. The goddess gave him a blank stare. You truly are interesting. Not afraid of the consequences of your actions at all. Humans sure are free spirits. I sure am afraid of stuff. I was just a poor victim of you, think about it. If they fixed the elevator, then I would be still reviewing books. I am still afraid of pain, and I am nowhere near immune to it. However, now that I have experienced death, I feel calmer than ever before. Maybe it's because I no longer need to crush or dictate someone's life when it comes to writing. I am free. You know, maybe it was better to die in that elevator, rather than to get attacked by someone one day because I cancelled the publication of their novel. Yomite's soul quivered and he fell silent. Your intestines and bones were crushed inside of the falling elevator. What a beautiful and gory way to go out. The goddess giggled. That's really morbid and not nice. But forget it, it's probably impossible for me to understand an entity like you. So, what now? Do I get to go to heaven or hell? I am probably guessing hell since I've been quite rude. He sighed. This was one of his problems. He was too honest and upfront, especially when it came to something he loved. Maybe if he laughed and told her that her story was amazing, he would be going to heaven, but now, hell was guaranteed for him. Yomite, you are such an idiot. He cursed himself in his mind. The woman pondered over his words like a scholar. I shall take that as a compliment. And no, you don't need to worry. There is no heaven nor hell. Humans that die are usually traveling as souls in the orbit till the end of time. Which is kind of boring if you asked me. I would rather read a good book, wouldn't you agree? However, the most interesting bunch of individuals gets to experience what's it like to be transported to a random world of my choosing. For my own entertainment, of course. Transported to a world? Yomite was confused, but soon enough, his face lightened up. Is this what I think it is? The fantasy novel turning into an isekai? Yes, just like I've said. If I find them worthy enough to entertain me, they get a chance for a new life. This is our first meeting, Yomite his Shah. My name's Sia. I'm a fallen being of creation that guides people to the afterlife. Now, putting aside my interest in entertainment, you now have two options. Seeing that Yomite was paying attention, she smiled and continued. The first option for you is to let go of all of your regrets, memories, and everything to enter the soul stream and wander around for eternity doing nothing. The second option is to get your soul into a new body and be reborn as a new person with all of your memories intact. You would begin a new life. A new story. With a new body, of course, as your old one was pretty much obliterated. Yomite immediately chose the second option. There was no point in losing everything when there was an option to have a new life. What kind of idiot would choose that? It was an exciting opportunity. He also felt like he experienced quite a short life and still wanted to do so many things. He believed he made the right choice and pressed the matter. I choose the second option. What do I do now? You are quite the impatient man, aren't you? Well then. She waved her hand, and a beam of light entered his soul. Yomite was startled and thought it might hurt as it directly penetrated his ghost-like body. But it was just warm and didn't harm him in any way. What was that? She winked at him and smiled. Oh, just a small gift from me. The world I'm sending you to seems a bit dangerous, and it's only natural for me to give you something in return for your professional review. Also, I dislike weak protagonists. I see. You will be a new protagonist of the story. Only you decide how the story will continue to progress. Whether the main heroine dies or manages to find her sibling, you will play a huge role in that, so bear it in mind. You've received 3 abilities from me. The Tempest of the Story, the Tempest of the Heart, and the Tempest of the Particles. The Tempest of the Story lets you choose the optimal way to progress the story and dialogues, and once activated, you cannot disable it and have to choose one of the options provided. There is always one good option, one fine option, and one that is very bad and usually leads to a disaster scenario. So do be cautious when using it. The Tempest of the Heart lets you peek into the desires of any person or even an animal. You will see what they like and dislike. It even has a relationship meter of how the targets feel about you. It can also give you a small portion of the target's information like name, age, race, and so on. Definitely use this to your advantage if you wish to learn about someone. It might also work on some of the special items. The Tempest of the Particles is an offensive ability that will help you overcome most enemies. It's quite hard to maintain, but you should get a gist of it after a few tries. The ability summons a cube of particles that can erase the nearby structures or enemies from existence, so be sure to keep it in check and not to use it around other people. It takes a bit for you to charge it before you can use it. The last thing I am going to mention is related to magic, as we are running out of time. All of the spells, abilities, and magic are projected through a thing called vision. Vision is usually an amulet and is a gift from gods. Now, just so you know, I don't have the right to give away a vision to you, so I am just giving you a bunch of abilities instead. You will be awarded a tattoo of the Fallens from me, which will be acting as a catalyst for your abilities, but people may find it suspicious if you use the Tempest of the Particles without vision, so bear it in mind. Yomite nodded. Although he had numerous questions, he felt like trying it out himself instead of listening to a tutorial guide. Who likes to read through a tutorial? It's like reading through the terms of services. Nobody does that. It's more fun to explore stuff on your own. He knew it might come back to bite him in the ass later, but he didn't care. He already listened enough to her explanation anyway. Time to enjoy his iSky life. After she was finished, she put the book she was holding on top of his ghost-like shoulder and asked him, "Are you ready for your adventure?" "Yes." Yomite nodded without hesitation. "Then, without any more delay, I welcome you to the world of Teyvat." With a quick motion, she swung the book through his soul, making him disappear. "Before you enter, a new body will be reconstructed for you. It will be randomly generated," was the last thing Yomite heard before the light in front of him faded away. The shining clouds in the background slowly began to spread around the galaxy ceiling. They spread everywhere like a rug with no end, encircling a certain planet. Show me the genre. Show me the choices you make. Show me what you consider to be an interesting story worthy of a 5-star review. Chapter 2, Encounter. His mind became all white. This was the summoning procedure, but first, he had to wait till his body was reborn anew. His soul was pulled into a vortex and soon enough, a new body was formed. He didn't know how he looked like, nor could he choose his appearance, which was kind of disappointing, but he knew he had no right to complain when he was the chosen one to reincarnate. It was still better than being reincarnated as a baby or a child, and while he was clueless about his appearance, the one thing he could see with his newly formed yellow eyes was the color of his skin, which he was glad for because it stayed the same as in his past life. His late mother was South African and his late father was Japanese. At the time of their relationship, interracial couples were illegal under the apartheid law of South Africa, and a boy that was more white than his peers was considered to be an albino, even though he didn't look remotely similar to one. Due to this very law, his parents were forced to separate, and both he and his father were chased away. Since then, Yomite was living in Japan with his father. He only ever saw his mother from photos, and unfortunately, just a year before he turned 18, the interracial restriction was lifted, but soon enough, he learned his mother has passed away shortly before that due to an illness. His father had passed away a few years prior as well, so it's not like he has anyone left. Luckily, there was no one waiting for him. As he thought about his past, his body was finally reconstructed and he was ready to go. The last thing he noticed before closing his eyes and losing consciousness was a black dragon tattoo on his left arm stretching all the way up to his chest. Ah, the catalyst. Several thousand years ago, many godlike Archons roamed Teyvat, each with control over particular aspects of an element. However, when 7 divine thrones in Celestia opened up, promising the victors absolute dominion over their element, bitter power struggles now collectively known as the Archon Gods' War erupted throughout the land. 2,000 years ago, the last divine seat was claimed, and the Archons who emerged victorious became known as the 7 Gods. Together, they established the continent of Teyvat, its 7 nations, and the 7 elements as they are known today. Each of the 7 possesses a gnosis, a higher nexus of power that allows them to resonate directly with Celestia and grants them the divine ability to defend their respective nations. However, during the Great Archon War, hundreds of thousands of gods have perished or disappeared, nowhere to be found. Now, thousands of years have passed, and everything is lost in history. However, how will the world change when a new existence invades their homeworld? The world of Teyvat, Windwhale Highland, Wolvendom. In the center part of the Teyvat laid a dangerous forest that was filled with terrifying magical creatures and humanoid monsters called hilichurls. This place was a paradise for many adventurers because they could hunt high-level monsters and suddenly become rich overnight, no longer needing to worry about eating and drinking in their lifetime. But countless adventurers had forever slept in this very forest because of their low strength. In the periphery of this monster forest was a small stream, at whose side a youth wearing fancy martial arts clothing laid down. This youth looked to be 18 years of age, but he didn't have any trace of childishness on his face, and those 2 dashing eyebrows and slightly chocolate skin of his only increased his handsomeness and exotic appearance even further. At this time, the tattooed hand of this youth slowly moved a few times, as he gently opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was clouds, slowly moving across the blue sky. With his ears, he picked up the sound of birds chirping in the distance. He looked around him with a puzzled expression. What the? He slowly stood up, looking around his surrounding environment. Only a water stream and trees appeared in his vision. He was completely puzzled looking at these huge towering trees. Where was he? He held his head and unceasingly rolled on the ground as one scene after another flashed through his mind. After a few moments, he stopped whining and forced a bitter smile on his face. Now I remember what happened, so this is the new world, huh? Not bad, not bad. Yomite was studying this information in his brain, after which he made a wry smile in his heart. He had never thought that one day he would lose his life in an elevator only to get reincarnated to another world just like those protagonists with cheats. It was an amazing feeling. His life was boring, yet he found his salvation in books. But the more he read, the more he realized the wasted potential of the authors and their characters. So he decided to become a reviewer to lead the authors to the right path and help develop their stories in the best way possible. But now, his life was no longer going to be boring. After all, he became one of them. One of the protagonists he always dreamed of and read about in the books. Looking back at his life, he had no anchors weighing him down. His parents have passed away years ago, he never had a sibling, and he could care less about his ex-girlfriends or wannabe friends. The first thing I should do is... He felt extremely thirsty, and having seen the stream in front of him, his desire to survive flared up. He struggled to get up, but after a few tries he managed to do it. After that, supporting his weak body, he started to walk towards it. He didn't know why he felt like shit, but he assumed it was only a side effect of the soul assimilation with his freshly created body. When he looked at the water, a darker-skinned male with dark brown hair and a pair of yellow eyes appeared in the reflection. That's completely different from what my appearance was prior to the death, but I am definitely much more handsome than I was before, which I don't dislike at all. For whatever reason, the back ends of his dark brown hair were red, making his appearance even more exotic. Well, it's hard to tell what's exotic in this new world, but I sure am satisfied with what I got." He pulled up his shirt and observed his chiseled chest. His new body was very fit, and his muscles were basically exploding with power. While he was pretty fit in his old world, he never would have reached this level in that life. "Well, she did say it's going to be dangerous around these parts, so I guess she made my body with that in mind? But still, this body is boosted as hell. I feel like I could fight a bear with my bare fists." He reached his hand towards the water stream to take a quick sip as his thirst was still not satisfied, but then he realized that he shouldn't drink that, and should instead find a different source of water. Water streams support entire ecosystems of living things. Bacteria are likely to thrive in such an environment. Drinking stream water would definitely expose him to these bacterias. It's especially dangerous when he had no idea what kind of bacterias there were in this new world. "I don't have any good filtering device or anything I could use to filter out the water. I should definitely go with the safe route and scout out the area first. It seems there are just trees all around me. I need to look for a place where the water flows the fastest. If it is a good distance away from the source, it means there are fewer chances of me drinking unsafe water." He looked on and noticed the stream was basically endless. It would take him forever to find that specific location. Damn, it's only chapter 1, and yet things are getting complicated already. I love it. But EY, it's still better than drinking water filled with animal piss and bacteria of all kind. He was about to head out when he heard someone singing a kid's song in the distance. "Silly churl, Billy churl, silly Billy hillichurl. Frilly churl, Willy churl, frilly Willy hillichurl ah. Oya? Oya oya oya. Hey there! You look like you've died recently, do you need help?" Tehi. When people say, "Time stood still," they must surely be talking about times like this. There was a girl casually walking through the forest towards him, with a polearm in her hands. With one smooth motion she stabbed her hand, shedding blood on the said polearm, and spreading the blood all around the blade. The blade that was bathed within the blood slowly heated up and a small streak of fire ignited around it. "Time to be purified, evil spirit, hee." Yomite brought his hands in front of him in an attempt to stop her from attacking. "Wait. I am not an evil spirit. I am a human." The blade stopped a few centimeters away from his head. He could feel his sweat pouring down from his forehead. He just reincarnated. He definitely didn't want to die this quickly. The swing wasn't that fast, so he could have definitely dodged it, but he was still a bit disoriented from the soul transmission. Moreover, she was the first person he met since he arrived here. It would be wiser to ask her about the world. She glanced at him with an indifferent face and pulled her polearm back. "Is that so? Then why can I sense the deathly aura around you? You smell like you've died recently." Her voice was playful, but from her actions, Yomite considered her a dangerous individual. Was his difficulty set to hell? Still, she looks like she is hesitating. That's good. I wouldn't want to die in a tutorial. How embarrassing would that be? I need to think of a perfect way to play this. What should I say? He cleared his throat with a cough and was about to think of something when the grass around him stopped swaying, and the girl herself stopped moving. Everything around him came to halt, and a small blue window with 3 choices opened up in front of him. 1. I was just reincarnated into this body. I did die, but I am alive right now. Don't hurt me. 2. I really am a human. Stop pointing your weapon at me or I will call for help. Someone will definitely arrest you. Police. Police. 3. I just killed a squirrel and ate it. Maybe that's why you feel the deathly aura around me. Isn't this the Tempest of the Story ability? That's great. This will definitely come in handy. But what the hell are these choices? It looked to him as if his ability turned on by him thinking about what he should say. But he will have to figure that out later. Now, he is facing a bigger problem. He looked at the options and couldn't help but frown. The goddess did tell me there was always one good choice, one fine choice, and a very bad choice. I can't escape this and need to choose one of them, or I am guessing I will be stuck here forever. From the way I look at this, the first one is probably the good one, the second one is the fine one, and the last one is the worst, but a gut feeling of a novel reader is telling me that usually the weirdest one out there turns out to be the correct one. But the question is, should I risk it or not? I am hesitant. After a few minutes of doing nothing but thinking and staring at the choices, he chose to rely on his gut feeling. He slowly aimed his finger at the third choice, and his mouth moved almost automatically. I just killed a squirrel and ate it. Maybe that's why you feel the deathly aura around me. The next moment, he saw another icon pop up. 1. The worst choice. 2. The average choice. 3. The best choice, heavy checkmark. Yomite stared at the checkmark that appeared before him and sighed in relief. His gut feeling didn't betray him. Not long after, the world returned back to normal. The girl in front of him had a thoughtful look on her face and nodded. I see, that would make sense as your smell is so faint. In that case, let me remove the smell for you so that it wouldn't bother you or anyone else, okay? The girl put away her polearm and pulled out a yellow talisman with weird symbols from her pocket. Yomite stabilized his breathing and calmed down his beating heart. He was still a bit afraid she would try to do something, but once she put away her polearm, his face relaxed. She put the talisman on his chest and a yellow glow was emitted in the surrounding area. A few seconds later, she cheerfully smiled and said, It seems like you were telling the truth. You are truly not an evil spirit. HM? How are you so sure all of a sudden? Didn't you want to kill me a few seconds prior? Tehi, sorry about that. If you were an evil spirit, the talisman would have turned red and purified you, just now. I see, this is certainly important to remember for the future. Yomite thought. He took a closer look at her, and couldn't help but admit the girl in front of him was very good-looking. She was a young girl with fair skin and scarlet eyes with flower-shaped pupils. Her eyes were intriguing and he felt like he would get lost in them if he were to stare into them any further. A flower-shaped pupils. This is a fantasy world for sure, amazing. She had long, dark brown hair fading to crimson at the tips, parted into a pair of twin ponytails. Her clothes consisted of a dark coat and black shorts with a pair of low-heeled shoes. She also had a few rings with skulls on her hands, and coupled with her black nails, it only added to her overall beauty and fit her very well. Well, we started off quite steamy, haven't we? I'm the 77th director of the Wangxing Funeral Parlor. Hu Tao. Who as in, who put me in this coffin? And Tao as in, I can't get tout. Feeling proud about her dry joke, she threw a triumphant smirk his way. No, not funny. Choosing to ignore her, Yomite introduced himself instead. My name is Yomite His Shah and I am a simple wanderer. Currently, I am trying to find a way out of this forest, so if you don't mind, would you show me the nearest village or city? She put a finger on her head and tried to think. Soon after, her smile beamed. Actually, I was about to go to the nearest city of Mondstadt. You can follow me if you want to. I don't mind. Yomite nodded and glanced at her small bag. He was thinking about whether to ask her or not, but decided to do it anyway. Hey, before we leave, do you have clear water to drink by any chance? I am dying of thirst. She didn't seem like she minded. Sure. Here, drink this. And looked into her bag. She quickly pulled out a wooden bamboo bottle with plenty of fresh water inside and handed it to him. Yomite swiftly grabbed it and gulped the contents down. The water was sweet, and it was the first time he ever drank something like this. He almost felt like he was drinking a melted popsicle or an apple juice. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Thanks, that felt great. I am sorry I drank the entire thing. I will be sure to buy you something in the future. He returned the bamboo bottle into her bag. While it might have not been much, thirst was scary, and at times like these, people will part with expensive things just to save their lives from thirst or hunger. So Yomite was taking it as a serious debt, especially since she didn't even hesitate, and willingly gave up on her supplies. Don't mind. Once we are in the city, I will be able to restock, so don't worry about it. Let's go to the city. Sure, Son Dash. He couldn't finish what he wanted to say, as she grabbed his wrist. Now let's go. No time to waste. She ran while pulling Yomite behind her. 5 minutes later, they managed to get out of the forest. Soon enough, they saw the mentioned city of Mondstadt. It was a huge fortress that acted as a large stronghold, and it seemed to have a town as its base. Fortresses are usually run by high military soldiers, which means it might be impossible for me to enter without some form of identification or verification. He looked at Hu Tao and thought about his second ability, the Tempest of the Heart. Apparently, it was a skill that would let him peer into the heart of an individual, an animal, or even certain items. The only requirement was looking at the target, but so far, no matter how he tried, he couldn't activate it. Status, Observe, Arise, Stats, Skill Window, Tempest of the Heart, sheesh, none of these are working. Feeling that the atmosphere turned awkward ever since their weird introduction, Yomite tried to strike up a conversation. So, where are you from if you don't mind me asking? He wasn't the best when it came to talking to a person he just met, but even he could strike up a normal conversation. I am from Liyue. I work as a director of the Wanxing funeral parlor, but I did tell you that before. If you ever need a coffin, I will give you a 48% discount. So, what do you say? No. No thanks. I am too young to die, and what's with that weird percentage? Might as well let it be 50%. Now, don't be shy. It's completely normal to buy the coffins up front. Especially for the adventurers and such. You never know when you will kiss the dirt after all. No need to be scared of death. It comes suddenly, but it's essentially the end of your journey, and all journeys must come to an end, so you should just accept it with open arms. That's not very uplifting. It shouldn't be, it's about dying after all. But then again, passing away is a peaceful process, so there is really no need to be afraid. I am not afraid of death anymore. It's more about the fact that if I die without being able to finish what I wanted and without enjoying my life, it would be a really depressing death. I might even come back to haunt people as a ghost just for fun. I won't be able to pass on in peace. And that may be true. Restless souls are the worst kind to deal with, and sometimes you even have to complete certain requests or tasks before they can pass on, like this little girl here. She pointed towards the back of her neck, and a small white apparition peeked from within her long ponytails, although it was visibly uncomfortable to show itself. Wait, that's an actual ghost? Is this how people look like after they die? Yomite was intrigued. While he did die, he never saw the form of an actual dead person's soul. Now this little girl here is just a remnant of her soul. Unfortunately, she was unable to pass on due to her regrets, so I offered to help her. It's been 5 years, but I still wasn't able to fulfill what she wanted from me. At this point, her soul has dissipated so much, she probably doesn't even remember what she was searching for. Hu Tao turned a bit solemn and caressed the head of the ghost with her finger, which in turn headbutted into her cheek lightly out of affection. The atmosphere turned pretty dark, but she quickly bounced back into her eccentric personality. But back to your question. Once a person passes away, they either become a restless soul or they immediately pass on to the other side. If I see a restless soul, it's my job as the director of the Liyue Wanxing funeral parlor to make it follow me to a special place called Paradise, where it stays until I complete their requests. After that, it can pass on in peace. Sounds tough. But I think it's great that you are helping them. Because without you, they would just wander on forever until they turn into a malicious spirit, right? Hu Tao stopped in her tracks, and her mouth slightly quivered. Yep, that's right. You are quite knowledgeable yourself. I might make you my assistant. If the restless soul goes unattended, they might turn into a vengeful spirit, in which case, we can only exorcise them. Which was something similar to what I wanted to do to you a few minutes prior, he. Yeah, don't make me remember something like that. He glanced at her hand, which was pierced through by her polearm, and saw that it has magically healed. Come to think of it, I noticed a streak of flames during your attempt to behead me. What was that about? Are you a magician or a polearm master that can cast sorcery on your weapon, or maybe a lancer? Magician? Lancer? Sorcery? I am not sure what those mean, although I did get some weird power after my grandpa passed away. The thing was called, what was it again? Viscent? No, vision! That's it. He glanced at the pendant on her chest and thought, so this is the thing the goddess mentioned. She is one of the chosen ones by one of the gods of this world. I think that it would be wise to stick to her for now. She is a valuable source of info. As Yomite was thinking about stuff, Hu Tao was fidgeting. It was only then that he realized he was basically staring at her chest area the entire time, and while she was fully clothed, it still didn't change the fact that it was creepy and uncomfortable for the other party. That was what he thought. You don't have to stare at them for so long, they won't grow. I tried a lot of things like drinking milk, but none of them worked out. She gave him a teasing smile, and she didn't seem to feel embarrassed about anything that she just said whatsoever. It was as if she was talking about some everyday normal topic. I wasn't looking at you like that at all. You look like you are 13. Unfortunately, underage Lolas are out of my list, and while you might be attractive, you are still a child, so you don't have to worry about it, although I do admit it might have been uncomfortable for you, so I apologize for that. He swatted her teasing away like a fly and delivered a heavy punch to her ego. Hu Tao definitely felt this one. Loli. Yomite observed her crestfallen expression and continued. Anyway, what is this vision about? I've never seen it before, can I check it out? He smiled with a bit of hidden intent. Loli, vision, oh, you mean the thing you were looking at? She pointed towards her chest. There was a red ruby crystal pendant engraved into her clothes. Yeah, whatever. It just showed up in my house one day. I don't really need it, but it does help me with purifying the vengeful spirits, so I guess it can stay. Here you go, you can check it out. She unbuttoned the vision from her chest and threw it to him. Fu, but to call me a Loli. Hu Tao still seemed stunned by Yomite addressing her as a Loli, dejectedly looking into the distance as if she didn't want to acknowledge the reality. I wasn't expecting she would know what that term means, but whatever, it's not like it matters. Yomite caught it and observed the exterior. Interesting, so from what I heard, this apparel is projecting her power like a catalyst. The moment he touched it, however, the crimson-like color dissipated from the pendant, and it immediately turned gray. So it's like that, huh? It only works for the chosen ones, so even if the user was to die or if it was stolen, it would be a useless piece of jewelry. Well, at least some info for now. Interesting. He returned the pendant to her and smiled. It seems like you were chosen by the gods, lucky you. Hu Tao sighed and replied. I honestly don't really care about being chosen or something. We are entrusted by the people to loyally see out their wishes. Wanxing Funeral Parlor is special, in that it carries a dual responsibility, to those both of this realm and the next. I could care less about something like that when people all around the world are suffering. Yomite widened his eyes and felt his respect for her jump by leaps and bounds. What a selfless person. She is basically only living for others, completing tasks so that other people can rest in peace. That's actually a really noble way of living. Aren't you a bit bored though? It's fine, I am not. Because during my adventures I get to bury a lot of corpses into the ground, which is actually pretty fun. Although sometimes I play with the bones and forget where I put them, so I am forced to bury them while they are missing some of their body parts, but stuff happens. It's funny how the respect for someone can disappear in a matter of seconds. Chapter 3. A long-lost brother? A carriage made a loud creaking sound as it drove over the pavement. A large lizard-like creature was pulling the cart. Before his eyes were houses built from red bricks, the streets right out of Europe from the Middle Ages. There were no cars, bikes, power lines, or telecommunication cables. He looked around the street, watching people pass by. There are mostly human inhabitants, but there were also a few people with animal ears. I have yet to spot something resembling an elf or a dwarf though, but maybe they reside elsewhere. They got into the city relatively easily, although he could tell a lot of people were looking his way. They were probably suspicious of a new face. Now that he looked around, there wasn't really anyone with a darker skin tone, so he knew he must have been standing out to some degree. Anyway, he was satisfied with how he looked and the clothes that were provided to him with this body. The goddess did a good job with that. It would be a disaster if he were to appear in this world naked. Now that would have been a hell of a difficulty. He is also glad that he was able to reincarnate into this fantasy world. Right now, he also found himself a new companion, and he can't wait for his adventures to begin. To gain riches, search for excitement, and to make a harem. Everything will be great. But still. Hu Tao, what the hell was that about? You said you had a plan to get us in. Why were the guards acting as if you were an international criminal? Walking by his side was Hu Tao, cluelessly sucking on a lollipop she found in her bag. What is what? Yomite grit his teeth. She is acting as if nothing had happened just a few moments ago. Just how much of a bad reputation does she have for the guards to freak out that much? All this time, they have been following a person that called himself the cavalry captain. If it weren't for him, they might have not even been able to get to the city in the first place. He told them he would introduce them to a higher-up that might help them with what they need. What are you waiting for? Let's go, brother. Fufu. Yomite glanced at the figure of his new acquaintance and followed him. Ha, it would be nice if nothing bad happened for the rest of the day. 5 minutes earlier, as the duo of exotic-looking individuals got closer towards the main gate of Mondstadt, 2 knights have crossed their path. Who goes there? Halt! The knights aimed their swords towards the 2 unknown people. Don't move any further. Show us proof of identification, or else we won't let you through. Sounds tough. What do we do? Do you have a Mondstadt identification card by any chance, Yomite? Nope. Are we in trouble? Naturally, the exotic-looking duo was Yomite and Hu Tao. Yomite had already guessed this, but the moment they got near, they immediately met with the first obstacle. The guards. Considering he wanted to find a place where he can stay for a longer period of time, attacking the guards or provoking them in any kind of way wasn't the smartest decision. I see. Well, leave it to me then. This shall repay my earlier debt of trying to be exorcise you with a smile on my face. Hey, I heard that. Did you really have to put it that way? In any case, if you have a solution to get us into the city, then please be my guest. Yomite folded his hands and patiently observed her. Hu Tao waltzed towards the guards with a creepy smirk. Well then, gentlemen, my name is Hu Tao, and I am the 77th director of the Wanxing Funeral Parlor. I am here with the official business proposition for the Adventurers Guild. As you can see, I and my assistant wish to enter the city of Mondstadt. Assistant? Excuse me? Yomite just rolled his eyes and sighed. As long as it got them in. The knights immediately fidgeted when they heard the name of the infamous funeral parlor. They met each other's gaze and whispered, Wanxing, Fu Funeral Parlor. Isn't she the crazy individual we should be avoiding at all costs? Why yes, the Adventurer Guild states that no one should get too close to her, but she said she had official business with the guild. What do we do? Both of them were trembling, afraid that they would get cursed by the crazy individual. Should we call the acting Grand Master? No, she is the busiest person of Mondstadt. We shouldn't bother her with pointless things. The knights were in a dilemma. They heard all kinds of things about her. There were rumors that she buries people with a creepy smirk on her face, unfazed of the death. They looked at her face and could indeed see the deadly smirk. It felt as if she was looking at them, or marking them as future potential corpses she can have fun with. There were also rumors that she offers coffin discounts to people that are completely healthy and young, while saying, your time will come one day anyway, so why not order a coffin beforehand? It comes with a discount of 50%. They heard all kinds of crazy and creepy stories about her. The knights looked at her assistant that had a dark aura around him. His gaze was as cold as if he was used to killing people and then burying them without a hint of sympathy. A trained mercenary that will do anything for the money. We can't let them enter. Yomite's mouth was slightly agape as he could clearly hear the guards whispering. A crazy person? That might fit her to some degree. She did try to behead me the moment we met, but I wonder why she is so infamous. He looked at her and knew that she probably heard them whispering as well, but wondered why she didn't react. Maybe it was an everyday thing for her. As the guards were discussing, a pair of hands touched both of their shoulders. Now what's the commotion? The knights shook for a bit before they recognized who it was. Sea Cavalry Captain. It's a pleasure to meet you. What brings you around here, sir? They had a lot of respect for the cavalry captain, Kia. He became a knight of Favonius at such a young age and then immediately promoted to a cavalry captain. His talent and strength were immeasurable, and yet, he never acted high and mighty or arrogant. He also had a strong vision that was so cold, his enemies begged for a quick death. He was always a carefree person enough to bring his subordinates peace of mind, although, on the battlefield, his methods of interrogation were always questionable. There was an assignment given to me by the acting Grand Master, but it was too boring, so I dipped, and now I finally found something interesting to do. He glanced at the newcomers, and the moment he saw Yomite, he raised his eyebrows. Both of them met gaze and stared at each other without saying anything. The knights tensed up and felt their blood boil. Something was about to go down. It seemed like their captain was about to draw his sword at any moment now. Oh, Yomite. Is that your brother? You look really similar. The one to break this awkward atmosphere was Hu Tao. Huh. No one expected anything like that. My brother? How did you even come up with something like that? Yomite was really confused about this girl. He had honestly no idea what to think about her. Well, you know. Your skin color is really similar. So maybe I thought you were lost-long siblings or something. After all, this is the second time I ever saw someone with a darker skin tone that wasn't a monster, and I have traveled to a lot of countries. She replied cheerily. Just because of my skin color? Yomite snorted. Yes, my bad, I forgot. She is an idiot. Kia burst out laughing. Yes, brother, come on in. Make yourself at home. I don't mind having another brother. He turned to the Knights of Favonius and said, Please let them in. I will vouch for them. If anything were to happen, I will bear the responsibility. Seriously? Chapter 4. She is gone. The mysterious Kia, the cavalry captain. His look was exotic, just as Yomite's. He was a tall young man of lean build with dark skin, and while this was already enough to give him the exotic and foreign look, his diamond-shaped pupils and long navy blue hair was the finisher. He had a long ponytail that reached his waist. He also wore an eye patch over his right eye. Yomite wondered if he lost his eye or if it was just a Chuyuni accessory. I guess I will have to ask him later. His clothes were form-fitting, consisting of a white fur cloak over a white jacket that exposed his chiseled chest, a navy shirt, and slim navy pants. He donned a cape resembling a single wing over his left shoulder. If anything, this person was much more exotic looking and wore more exotic clothes than Yomite did. Yomite also noticed that he possessed the godly source of power, the vision, which was hanging around his left thigh. His vision looked different in both design and color from the vision that Hu Tao had. His vision was blue, with 2 feathers, while Hu Tao's vision was red like crimson flames, and the design wasn't even remotely similar to the one he had. He is really strong. Yomite wondered to himself as he observed him from head to toes. The way he carried himself was especially something you can only learn how to do by continuous training. But his attitude was what actually kind of disturbed Yomite the most. He let us in without a care in the world, called me his little brother, and now is leading us to the commander of this city. Something is fishy here. But the good thing is that we made it into the city despite the fuss at the gate. He unconsciously looked at the carefree Hu Tao, who was still licking away at her candy. He observed the city and noticed that the city was indeed bustling with liveliness. The people looked pretty happy. That was a good sign. If the citizens are happy, then there is less chance of meeting an oppressive higher-up that might drive him away because he had no identification. Well, altogether, he was lucky he wasn't thrown into a world where there was an ongoing war or something. But he knew that peace would eventually go away and the war might happen one day, as Hu Tao told him there were plenty of other small countries like this one, that have desires to expand their territories. And as known from the history of mankind, there were always wars due to some stupid reasons to start a conflict. For example, he remembered that in the past, he read about a war that started because a couple of fishermen started throwing codfishes at each other. The name was the Codfish War. It was about a territorial dispute of fishing. So if one day, a war broke out, which side would he be fighting for? Or would he just lay low somewhere until it all ends? Nah. It's pointless to think about stuff like that now. In any case, my old world was a bizarre place for sure. As they stepped inside the city, he felt as if he was on a market. All around him were shops of all kinds. From a shop that looked like it was selling flowers, to an outside blacksmith, to something that resembled a scam, selling some kind of protective divine artifacts charms. I have never seen an outdoors smithy before. I used to spend a lot of time in a smithy back on Earth. My father's friend owned a smithy, so we attended it regularly. Seeing one that is maintained outdoors, and looks like it's a self-improvisation, brings a lot of joy to me. The smithy was run by a burly middle-aged man with a beard, together with what looked to be his disciple. The forge was also pretty well done for an improvisation. I told you to preheat it. Preheat it. Do you know what that means, you bampot? But master, I wanted to quickly finish it so that I can start making another sword. Jobby, 'tis trash. You're reaping what you sow. I won't allow you to go play by yourself. You're better finish 'tis thin before the sun lays low. Awa and bow your head. Why yes, master. They gathered quite the crowd of people who were laughing at the boy's misfortune. It was an everyday sight, and it was simply too funny and satisfying to listen to the amazing and bountiful dictionary of his master. It felt like a comedy skit. Yomite also couldn't help but smile at the sight. He remembered being the same, inexperienced child, but you learn along the way and from your mistakes. Good luck, kiddo. As he looked further to his left, there was a large building with a sign that read Adventurers Guild. Yomite was pleasantly surprised he could read, which could either mean his body was modified by the goddess to the point that he can perform speech, read and write in their language, or this world's language was the same as back on Earth. He noticed there was a black-haired beauty behind a counter, which was also outdoors for whatever reason. Usually, in iSky stories or in a fantasy setting, the Adventurers Guild is a rowdy place full of people that would try to pick a fight with you. There would always be a cute lady behind a counter, But the counter and the board with quests were usually located inside of the guild and not outside, so this a breath of fresh air. The woman behind the counter looked diligent, and didn't move a single inch since the past minute. The professionalism of this person was definitely showing. It's almost scary, she isn't even blinking. Is she a human? As he was looking around, Kia stopped and waited for him to feast his eyes upon the city. Yomite noticed this and got moving. Do you like it here? Oh yeah, it's really peaceful. Of course. Knights like me are the reason why. Your older brother is simply an outrageously amazing person. Kia chuckled in amusement as he said this. So, how should I address you? Is Kia enough? Kia smiled and gave him a wink. Kia is fine, but you can also call me older brother. I always wanted to have a younger sibling, you see. My older sibling is rather grumpy, you could say. He is so cold to me, but it's fun to tease him, that's for sure. An older sibling? I see that you have your hands full. Well, we aren't really related as I was adopted into his family, but I regard him as such. I see. I never had a sibling, so I can't really tell how it feels like to have one, but it has to be fun to some degree. Also a bit annoying. Well, it's a shame that you couldn't experience the greatness of having a brother to bull. I mean, have fun with. Teasing him is one of the funniest things. But don't worry, now you have me, so come on, call me brother, older brother, big brother, Aniki, anything your heart desires. There was a reason why Kia was this excited. The trigger was the words that Hu Tao spoke of before. Having another brother sounded interesting and fun to him. Being able to tease two brothers at once is better than one. Moreover, he did look like he came from the same place as him. So his hidden motive might have had to do something with it. I think I will stick with Kia for now. Yomite was a bit uncomfortable calling a stranger brother. At least for now. Is that so? What a shame, little brother. I know you will change your mind soon enough. Well then, follow me. We are almost there. They turned right and followed a short path, quickly arriving in front of something that resembled a pub. This doesn't look like the place. No matter how much he looked, this was a pub. It didn't look like the headquarters of a fortress at all. Don't mind. Come on in. Yomite's face twisted into a troubled look at Kia's words. Maybe he was overthinking it. Maybe this pub was a hidden place where the strongest of individuals from the city gathered in like a secret room or something. That was a standard plot for a lot of novels. He decided to go in after all. Wait, where is Hu Tao? He turned around but she was gone. Kia, where did Hu Tao wander off? How did we lose her? Was she kidnapped? Hu Tao? Oh, you mean the little girl? She said she had something to discuss with the guild about her coffin discounts. She will be back shortly. If I remember, I saw her before. She came here like 2 years ago, I think, and raised a ruckus about selling coffins to healthy people. She is a lively one for sure. Yomite facepalmed himself. Geez, so she was serious when she was talking about the discount stuff? She is so small I didn't even notice she had disappeared. Unwillingly, he followed Kia inside the pub. Chapter 5. The three brothers Kia and Yomite entered the bar called Angel's Share. The place didn't seem that shabby, and there were a lot of regulars here, who frequent it. Old men, young guys in love, lined the walls, were muttering unintelligible slurs around the pipes hanging from their lips as they drank away their problems and sorrow. Alcohol is love, alcohol is life. Ah, Barbara-sama is so cute and adorable, and I love her so much. I hope that one day I could marry such a girl. Hey, dream on, Albert. Barbara-sama is the most popular girl of Mondstadt. A regular mortal like you has no way of dating an idol of a goddess. HM? A goddess? Yomite's interest was piqued. He inconspicuously eavesdropped on the two drunk men to gain some intel. I know, how unfortunate. One day I will confess though. Men are all about guts, and while Barbara-sama may seem untouchable like a beautiful goddess, she is still a mortal girl. Just watch me confess at the next Windbloom Festival. As the leader of the Barbara fan club, I, Albert, will do my best. Ahahaha. Good luck, kiddo. He earned himself a round of applause and some whistles. Yomite sighed. It was just about a girl that was pretty enough to be a goddess. I should really look for something like a library if I have the time, to find out how many gods there even are. Anyway, as he had feared, it turned out to be a completely normal bar. Kia brought him out for a drink, which he wouldn't decline in normal circumstances, but right now, he didn't even have a place to stay and didn't want to be forced to stay outside under the stars. Obviously, he has read many survival tactics and novels that hinted at how you should survive outside in the wild, but then again, you should always search for a place that you can call home. Moving around in wild, without a home like a homeless man or a vagabond, didn't really suit him. He sat down at the bar chair next to Kia. "What'll it be today?" the bartender asked while wiping away at a glass in a typical bartender fashion. "Oh, Charles, how are you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. I will have a berry and mint burst special as always. Oh, and can you give us a menu so that I can order something for my brother here as well?" Charles handed the menu to Kia. "Brother? I've been an employee here for more than a decade, and I thought your only brother was Master Dialek." He gazed at the young man sitting near Kia and couldn't help but admit that they indeed looked a bit alike. He leaned forward and whispered, "Well then, young man, are you being threatened or blackmailed in some way?" "If yes, blink thrice very quickly." Kia nervously scratched his neck. No, Charles, please stop. My older brother will kill me if you joke like this." As if you are actually scared of him. With your mental fortitude of pissing him off every few seconds, it's hard to believe you don't have balls of steel. As the bartender was mixing the drink, he gazed at Yomite with some hidden intentions. Yomite understood the man's plan and decided to play along. "Well, you see, kind sir, I was about to enter the city with my companion, and this person suddenly put his hand around my shoulders and dragged me away. My companion didn't make it and has unfortunately passed away, but I am here and lucky to be alive." He spoke with a terrible sense of guilt in his voice. "What? Unacceptable. Cavalry Captain Kia, I am telling Master Dialek and the acting Grand Master Jean." Kia furiously denied it and shook his head. "You can't be serious. Little brother, how can you say something like this? Things like this create big misunderstandings, and my big bro isn't the type to understand Jock." "What do I not understand?" Kia's shoulders stiffened as he slowly turned around. "Hey there, big bro, long time no see. Repulsive, call me Dialek, or I will kick you out of my bar." The man who entered the bar was none other than the owner of the Dawn Winery, which was known as the best producing winery in the world. He was also the older brother of Kia and the employer of Charles, the bartender. Yes, Kia had no choice but to comply, as he didn't want to leave the pub this soon. He will get back to Yomite for this later, in a brotherly way. Dialek looked at Yomite, and Yomite stared back at him. A few moments of silence had passed before Dialek spoke again. "Kia, did you multiply?" Kia almost spat out his drink. "See, I told you we look similar. The little girl was right too. My name is Yomite his Shah, and you can just call me Yomite. I heard some things about you from Kia already." He extended his hand. "Nice to meet you." Dialek, however, just stared at it and didn't shake it. An awkward moment later, Dialek scoffed and went behind the counter without saying a word. "Kia, who is he? Does he have an identification? How did he get into the city?" The atmosphere took a wrong turn, and Kia knew he had to explain. "This is my new younger brother Yomite. I decided to adopt myself a cute younger sibling as my older brother is a huge douchebag. Stop messing around and answer me. Who is this person? You do realize that the city of Mondstadt is in a pretty serious situation right now, right? We can't have some spies from foreign countries, or assassins enter the city and move around freely. Whoa, that's some huge accusations right there. Alright, let's relax, dear brother. I was planning on taking him to Jean after we were done here. There is nothing to worry about, she will know, and everything will be alright. And besides, my brother here is visionless and doesn't appear to have any weapon on his body, nor any hidden ones. I've checked earlier. He is completely harmless." "Huh? Checked earlier, what do you mean?" Yomite didn't remember anything like that happening. Kia gave him an innocent smile and replied, "I had to make sure that you were harmless, but now I am sure you won't cause trouble." A bead of sweat poured down the Yomite's forehead. "I didn't even notice him check me for my weapons, as I thought, this Kia is really strong." Dialek rolled his eyes and replied, "Don't trust Kia to that degree. There is no way he would check whether you have weapons or not. He is too lazy to do so. You can only trust half of what he says, at best. He is just talking shit again." I was caught, Tehi." Kia stuck out his tongue and scratched the back of his neck. "Alright then, thanks for the advice. What should I call you?" Dialek sighed and replied, "I don't really like talking with people, especially people who are not trustworthy yet. Dialek of Mondstadt. Not interested in idle chit-chat." If you have things you want to get done, let me know. If you turn out to be a criminal of some sort, colluding with Fatchery or other organizations like Abyss Order threatening the peaceful Mondstadt, I will eliminate you. I am not like the weak-willed Knights of Favonius. He said that as he poured himself a non-alcoholic beverage. I see, nice to know you too. Yomite Riley smiled about his rudeness, but he let it go. He was a bit interested in the topics Dialect mentioned. He was currently trying to gather as much information about the world as possible, so the things he mentioned were quite interesting. Knights of Favonius, Abyss Order, Fatchery, so many new terms are popping up. Anyway, he seems like a really cold guy. He is like a soldier that had witnessed war or something. He really seems like the type of guy that's hard to talk to. Dialect walked away and picked up the used glasses of wine and other beverages that were sprawled all around the empty tables. He thought that people should really learn how to clean up after themselves. Filthy pigs. While Dialect was cleaning up the tables, Charles spoke. Please, dear sir, don't take it to heart. Master Dialect is a really amazing person, and I am not only saying it because he takes my shifts from time to time despite being my master. No, it's fine, I have experience with rude people. I feel like he is trying to keep it in check, so that's fine. Besides, a little bit of toxicity never hurt anyone. He remembered the times as a reviewer when he didn't sign up a contract with some of the authors, and was usually shouted at, and even threatened by them to some degree, even though he was just doing his job and what his boss told him to do. Charles smiled and replied, I am glad, this one is on the house. He put a colorful drink on the table and passed it to Yomite. What's this? This is the apple cider from the Dawn Winery, which is special at Angel's Share. No need to worry, for it's a freshly squeezed and fruity non-alcoholic beverage. It has a strong sobering effect, so the patrons usually order it as the last thing of the night so that they won't die on their way home. Seems logical. He was about to taste it when Kia stopped him. Let me try something before you drink, little brother, alright? Yomite didn't mind and passed him the drink. Kia aimed his hand towards the bottom of the glass and his vision activated. Soon enough, a streak of cold rushed out of his hand and cooled down the drink. Cooled it, there you go, now try it. Yomite tasted the drink while thinking, so his vision grants him the power of ice. Interesting. Oh, the drink is really refreshing. Chapter 6. A Dragon at Level 1? Great. Yomite thanked the bartender for the free drink and left together with Kia. The last parting words of Dialect were that he was watching his every move and should he try something, he would dispose of him. Yomite didn't take it to heart, and wasn't scared about such trivial stuff. He didn't come here to start a war after all. He just wanted a home base. There was no need to start a conflict with any of the inhabitants or higher-ups. Kia has finally decided to bring him to the acting Grand Master, but Yomite knew they first had to pick up the baggage they left behind. The baggage in form of a little girl. As they were returning to the main gate, Yomite could already hear a very familiar squeaky and eccentric voice in the distance, arguing with the black-haired beauty of the Adventurers Guild. As I mentioned previously, we don't wish to accept your services, please see yourself out. So the 2+1 special didn't work out either. Still, this is the deal of your lifetime. Wu Tao came here to strike a deal. So I won't give up. Just accept my proposition, I swear you won't regret it. Look, I told you, we are not interested in the kind of cooperation you describe. The black-haired beauty was clearly upset about Hu Tao and wanted her to leave immediately. Come on. There is no need to get upset. Since our last negotiation a few years ago, I've come up with a new proposal, which I think you'll find has far more benefits for you. First things first, Wanxing Funeral Parlor will prioritize Adventurers Guild requests above all others. You will also receive 100 of our signature wooden coffins for free together with your first order. She placed her hands on top of the guild counter and continued. That's not all. We also provide an on-site cadaver collection service covering almost all regions in Liyue and Mondstadt. Now, we do charge slightly premium for a very small number of especially dangerous areas like Stormterror's Lair. But don't worry about that. I promise you it's still very affordable. Hu Tao nonchalantly stated, feeling confident that no one would be able to resist such an amazing opportunity. The black-haired lady had just about enough. I don't think you're hearing me. I get it, but just think about it. An adventurer's life is full of unexpected threats. It's only natural to take precautions. Mend the roof before it rains, as they say. Hu Tao wasn't backing off. She had to establish some form of connection or deal with the Adventurers Guild. The black-haired lady frowned. Yeah, no. I'm not so sure that saying applies in this context. Speaking of precautions, I'd rather focus on keeping my adventurers safe and healthy in the first place. The idea of dying is a possibility indeed, but that's a grim thought we shouldn't explore any further. It's time for you to go. I have to attend to other matters. Please leave. She stood up and went inside the guild house, forcefully closing the door behind her as a sign that the discussion has ended. Somewhat depressed, Hu Tao picked up her portable bag from the counter and left dejectedly. Aya, no success here either. She sighed. They don't know what's good for them. Maybe I should have offered more stuff. She turned around and saw that Yomite was standing there, watching, with Kia. Oh, didn't notice you there. Are you finished? Do you have the identification? Can we stay now? As if nothing had happened just now, her personality bounced back rather quickly. No, we are planning to go there now. We returned to bring you with us, Yomite replied. They pointlessly wasted time in that pub. They should have just gone there in the first place. I saw you had some difficulties in striking the deal? Humph. For sure. Rejecting a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They don't know what's good for them. It's their loss. Some things are inevitable. It's only a matter of time. Hu Tao wouldn't let such a trivial problem ruin her mood. So she was angry after all. Hearing her, Kia smiled. What a scary little girl. Talking about death so casually. If only my big brother could get over it. Some things are truly inevitable. Hu Tao, let's just go and leave it at that. All right. He knew there must have been something. Something like a goal she wanted to achieve by signing the contract with the Adventurers Guild. It couldn't have been just to gain profit. She was not that kind of person. He knew her for only like 20 minutes, but he could already perfectly picture her character in his mind. He remembered when she was talking about completing tasks and requests for the ghosts that cannot pass unpeacefully, so maybe it had something to do with that. Maybe she has deeper intentions. Something I have yet to know about. Hu Tao stretched her arms upwards. I really feel like burying someone. Where is the cute little zombie Chi-Chi when you need her? I am so lonely. Or maybe not. He rolled his eyes. Hu Tao, hurry up. We don't have all day. We still need to find ourselves a place to stay at. Preferably an inn or something. As mentioned before, sleeping under the stars is nothing like home sweet home. Yomite's remark made her frown. Ah, yes, it has come to this. She slowly wobbled towards them, and together they arrived in front of the Knights of Favonius headquarters in a relatively short time. So this is the true headquarters. It's pretty alright in size. Yomite commented after observing the building that was pretty close to something that resembled a church. A church or a manor house. I wonder if I could somehow contact Goddess Sia, but I doubt it. Hu Tao tilted her head. True headquarters? Don't mind it, let's just go in. Hu Tao cheerily nodded. You sure are a lovely duo, just watching you is fun. Kia smiled while greeting the nearby knights and entering the headquarters. Just as Yomite was about to enter the building, he frowned as he looked up into the sky. Damn, is it already so late? But wait, wasn't sun still shining a few moments ago? What is going? His words were interrupted by a howling wind, blowing into his face, making it hard to breathe. What the hell is happening? With his eyes hurting from the pressure of the wind, he could only barely see a large silhouette flying in the sky. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it was huge and possibly dangerous. Is that the Storm Terror? Hu Tao muttered while everyone looked up. Storm what? That name sounds ominous. He wanted to ask about it, but the wind was so strong he had trouble breathing. Storm Terror came to visit again, long time no see. Kia mumbled and reached out for his sword. Yomite managed to finally catch his breath and raised his voice to overcome the loud whirling sound of wind. Seeing that you are reaching for your weapon, I assume whatever that thing isn't a friendly unit, huh? Well, yes, but actually no. Stop with the wordplay, what the hell is that? A large silhouette was flying across the darkened sky. Women, men, children alike, hid inside their houses and prayed for the great wind beast to spare their lives. That thing is a dragon. It was our ally, now it's our enemy. Kia replied as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Chapter 7, A New Storm? A Goliath? A Colossus? A Sentinel? A monster? Maybe everything combined. A dragon. Usually an endgame monster in a lot of role-playing games. A mighty, prideful, and intelligent creature capable of human speech and also capable of annihilating cities by itself was currently flying around the city of Mondstadt. The monster has long revealed itself in its full glory. The old protector of Mondstadt has for some reason turned against his own people, time and time again. Having such an enormous build, he was surely one of the largest beings in the world of Teyvat. His entire body was colored in a shade of blue, with his main body being a lighter shade of azure blue. 6 large wings spanned across the sky, and perhaps that was what made him different from all the other dragons Yomite had encountered in his role-playing games. His laser-like pupils brought fear even into the most skilled of mercenaries. If I don't count Hu Tao, I have yet to encounter a single hostile enemy. There was no slime, goblin, or wolf. No tutorial monsters. Nothing. But now, the first thing I witness is a freaking dragon. Isn't this a bit too stupid? Feelings of anxiousness flooded his mind. He was indeed reincarnated into this world to go on an adventure, but for him to meet a dragon this soon could be his doom. Not only did dragons have a thick skin that couldn't usually be penetrated by normal weapons, but most dragons also had special abilities like a fireball, or in this case, most likely a destructive wind or a tornado spell. My third ability, the Tempest of the Particles, might be able to do something, but I have yet to try it out. I might injure an ally. So the logical thing to do would be not to use it unless it comes down to eat me. Shit! Couldn't you have come much later once I trained myself or something, you big lizard? He looked to his right at his 2 companions. Hu Tao was frozen stiff, holding her polearm in her trembling hands, while nervously mumbling, "Is it my time?" Anyone could tell she was frightened. Maybe not frightened of death, but the process. No one would want to be torn apart, or in the worst case, eaten alive by this kind of monstrosity. This kind of monster was an ultimate enemy that could cause multiple casualties, and even then they might not be able to beat it. Kia, on the other hand, just observed the situation with a frown. Attacks like these were happening a lot lately. Confrontation should be avoided at all costs, but looking at the damage it's doing to the city, I guess I should go and intercept it. Yomite looked at him in disbelief. Was he crazy? That's an actual dragon. Do you at least have a plan? Kia looked his brother into his eyes and replied, I don't. But don't worry, brother. Your big bro is a master at escaping. Dialect calls me an unkillable cockroach all the time. I will try to drive it away. It shouldn't be long before other knights hear of the commotion outside, and I already sent 2 knights to relay the message, so I should get reinforcements soon. He raised his sword and gazed at the creature with one of his star-like eyes. There is no way for me to fight it in the air. I will have to wait till it comes down. Seeing as you don't have a vision, please stay back, brother. It's dangerous even for people with a vision. The dragon can be merciless. He turned to Hu Tao and continued, I might require your help, so I would appreciate it if you snapped out of it, kiddo. Hu Tao clenched the polearm in her hands even more. Hee, I am not scared, don't worry. I am just excited that there might be so many people to bury after this incident, and that the Adventurers Guild might finally consider and accept my proposition. Despite what she was saying, the tone of her trembling voice told differently. TCH. Yomite was upset. Being sent to the back lines kind of pissed him off. He clenched his hands and put an end to the annoying feeling of being scared, by overriding it with a strong feeling of pain. He hit himself in the leg with his right fist. The force was strong enough to make him kneel for a bit, but he recovered rather shortly. Both Hu Tao and Kia looked at him in wonder. I might have a plan. Hear me out. He had a plan. It was a dangerous one, but if executed properly it could work. Kia saw his determination and nodded. Let's hear it then. If it helps, then Dialect can do nothing but accept you into the city. Could you, say, float a mountain of ice or shoot up a huge icicle right up close to the bastard? How strong is your vision? Let's see, a mountain of ice would be quite impossible for me, unfortunately. Yomite gave his reply a simple wave of his hand to say, it can't be helped, and looked up to the sky. What a beautiful dragon. If he wanted to survive in this world, Yomite knew he must use his abilities fully without hiding anything. While it might give him some trouble, he was not the type to lie or the type capable of holding a secret. That's just how he was, an honest idiot. What did it matter if I were to show my ability to someone? I would have to use them one day anyway, so why not now, when we are all in trouble? He resolved himself and told Kia and Hu Tao about the plan. That sounds interesting. But it might be hard for me to do. So give me a minute. We can definitely pull it off if you manage to aim it well. I trust you. Trust me? Hell, you shouldn't. I don't trust myself, but I will try my best. Oh, and before we do something, here, take this. Kia handed him a weird tool. This is... Yo Might stared at him for a moment before he understood. Thanks. No problem, you wouldn't have probably survived otherwise. With a smirk, he closed his eyes as his vision activated. He concentrated all of the cold energy he could gather within him and aimed it at one place. Yo Might told him to concentrate all of his power into one point and wait for his signal to release it. What about me? What should I do? What should I do? Hu Tao eagerly raised her hand. You should go and check around the city whether there is someone injured and bring them to safety. I am counting on you too. Hu Tao let a faint exhale trickle out, and as Yo Might awaited her reply, she narrowed her beautiful crimson eyes with flower pupils and said, Understand. Leave it to me. Despite her worries, she dashed off into the city to look for any civilians that needed help. Death would eventually come anyway. She wasn't afraid of it. What she was afraid of was being unable to pass on in peace. She searched hard for years, but she couldn't find her grandpa nor the previous directors of the Wangxing funeral parlor, which only meant one thing: that they were all able to pass on in peace without a single regret. Right now, Hu Tao still had a lot of tasks she needed to finish. She couldn't die here. Not yet. Otherwise, she would have plenty of regrets to share. She looked at the cute apparition hiding behind her ponytail and smiled. Hu Tao shall pass on once your wish is fulfilled, as stated in the contract. So until then, don't worry and enjoy the ride. Kia! The cute apparition squealed. Shall we begin the plan? Kia looked into the sky, waiting for Yo Might's signal. His plan was simply reckless, and he loved every single bit of it. He loved the excitement and interesting things, so this was right up his alley. Just as he was waiting for the signal, he witnessed something weird. A blonde-haired girl ascended into the sky with a wind glider, as if she was some kind of fairy or maybe an angel. Small beams of green magic light ignited in the sky, visibly damaging the Storm Terror. The girl was trying to force Storm Terror to retreat. Oh, it seems like something intriguing had appeared. We might actually win this battle. We just need to provide some kind of support. Kia and Yo Might both gazed at the visual spectacle in the sky. Kia, are you ready? Yep, I will start now. From afar in the sky above, Storm Terror, the dragon, furiously roared. There was a bug in the form of a flying human being, throwing magical spells his way. While his shield was able to nullify most of her attacks, and his natural regeneration was helping too, he wasn't fond of pain. Storm Terror didn't know what was wrong. He felt his mind being invaded by a foreign entity of some sort, telling him to destroy, kill everyone. Get his revenge on the humans he once protected. Kill humans, get revenge, kill, devour bug. His mind was almost completely corrupted, and he was being controlled by the emotions he shouldn't be feeling. Just then, he felt a powerful swirl of magic power from the city. The magic condensed was so strong it was starting to leak into the heavens. Having detected such threat, the Storm Terror gazed down. Third grade Vi Shaun Dan Jarrus. A navy blue-haired young man with an exotic appearance was standing in the center of the vast vortex of magical power. Over time, the magical power swirled around his legs, building up as the man gave it direction, gently constructing a very long lance of ice with a sharp tip protruding from it. The vile frozen weapon was in the 30-foot range, and its sharp spear tip was aimed at the center of the Storm Terror. Even from the distance, the might of the weapon appeared to be menacing, but the Storm Terror, noticing it before he fired it, was fatal. Futile, useless, puny, and... Hearing the words, Kia chuckled. Ah man, that's not nice. I am getting bullied by an ancient dragon. Dialect, my dear brother, where are you when I need you? Come and find me. I need you to bully this dragon for me. I am helpless. His smile slowly turned into a face full of scorn. Hey, cool it. He coldly mumbled as the icy spear launched from the ground towards the sky. Right after that, Kia dropped to his knees out of exhaustion. His energy and magical power were completely spent. Of course, the target of the icy spear was dead center in the torso of the flying dragon. The icy bloodlust accelerated rapidly with a force sufficient to break through the sky. but the time it took to achieve that acceleration, and being seen at the moment of its launch, meant the plan had failed from the very beginning. The objective unfulfilled. The Storm Terror easily dodged the magical spells from the flying girl behind him, and waved its tail. He was swimming through the sky by slicing the wind. That alone threw off the icy spear's aim. The pathetic spear of ice sailed wide of the mark, passing by the Storm Terror's flank, on its way to the distant sky. The instant the icy spear passed by, the very gentle sound of something shattering reached the Storm Terror's hearing. I gotta admit, you look much cooler from up close, but knowing that you are an enemy. An exceeding light sensation mounted the back of the Storm Terror. At the same time, it realized that something had landed atop its back. The icy spear, supposedly flying past, vanished without a trace, and the Storm Terror once again caught a whiff of even bigger torment of magic, now coming from its back instead. Hopefully this works, if not I am dead meat, but oh well, don't take it too personally. You attacked first after all. A burst of wicked laughter echoed across the sky, as Storm Terror faintly listened to his words. What is that? Get out! The dragon tried to shake him off, but it was as if the human was rooted in his scales. The blonde-haired girl stopped her fire and observed the situation. She almost didn't notice that a man was currently sitting on top of the dragon she was attacking all this time. Paimon thinks we should just get away for now. Paimon feels a huge amount of magical power coming from that crazy guy, who would willingly sit on top of a dragon. The girl nodded at the words of her companion, and retreated into the distance, still quietly observing the situation from afar. The ability summons a cube of particles that can erase the nearby structures or enemies from existence, so be sure to keep it in check and not to use it around other people. It takes a bit for you to charge it before you can use it. While I don't know how effective it will be as I've never used it before, it should still do quite the damage. He held his palms together and clenched them tightly. I guess it's time for me to try and say something cool. Nothing comes to mind. Either retreat or die here. Yomite shouted, and slowly, small particles of white light, energy, and magic morphed together into a medium-sized cube of destructive force. A burst of energy swirled, and it almost felt like space itself was twisting and distorting. All three of the forces blended together and rested between his two palms in harmony. He held the force in his trembling hands and aimed it towards the back of the dragon. He noticed something weird on his back. It almost looked like a purple blood clot. There were two of these weird things on his back. It felt like those were his weak points. They were so conveniently placed there for him to attack. He might have arteries around these parts. Let's try attacking it. With a mighty yell, he unleashed the cube into the purple blood clot. In one instant, the light enveloped the sky, and in the next, a sharp sound was born. The light and sound chained into each other, intertwined and resonating, a simple, clear melody filling the air. The moment the cube came in contact with Storm Terror's shield, it completely crumbled into molecular pieces that soon disappeared together with a huge part of his scales and one of the blood clots. A large amount of blood spilled from Storm Terror's back. He was dealt a fatal injury. Gah, human! Storm Terror bellowed in pain, shaking Yomite off of him. Yomite was about to try and make another one of those cubes to repeat his attack, but the dragon simply retreated far away. Storm Terror had regenerative properties, so his injuries would eventually recover, but it would take him more than a month to have a full recovery. That meant that Storm Terror wouldn't be bothering anyone for the time being. Everyone was watching the spectacle with bated breath. Knights, residents of the city, Hu Tao, and obviously Kia. Soon enough, the violent torrents of wind had gone away, clearing out the afternoon sky, returning to the shining sun. The blonde-haired girl elegantly descended from the sky, as if she was a professional at flying with the wind glider, training for years, while Yomite was wiggling in the sky like a bird without wings. Shit. Kia! How the hell does this thing work? He was never good with heights. It took a moment for him to stabilize himself in the air with his fake wings and drop safely down on the ground. Just don't panic. Everything will be alright, Kia weakly shouted, still tired from his last attack. But my younger brother sure is something else. He chased Storm Terror away when he doesn't even have a vision. Kia frowned, but soon, his expression relaxed. Everyone has secrets. He will tell us eventually once he feels like it. The moment Yomite touched the ground, he relaxed. I am alive. That would have been scary if I fell from such height. It was almost goodbye iSky world. Welcome Sia, long time no see. Still, I have to thank Kia for this device later. Without it, I wouldn't be in one piece right now. Before they initiated the plan, Kia gave him his own wind glider, which was a really popular device. As the name implies, you can glide in the sky for a short period of time. A pair of fake wings, if you will. Although you need a license first. Chapter 8 Preferences. After the Storm Terror had escaped, Yomite wanted to return the wind glider to Kia, but he told him he could keep it as he had spare ones. Kia was still exhausted, but seeing that they managed to successfully defend Mondstadt and repel Storm Terror with the help of Yomite, and the blonde-haired girl brought a smile to his face. He picked himself up from the ground, and soon enough, he heard a voice of a girl that was very familiar to him, shouting in excitement. "You were amazing! I am so glad you are okay!" A brown-haired girl with a red ribbon on top of her head, resembling rabbit ears, was cheering for the safety of the blonde-haired girl. "I was scared for a few seconds because you just flew up without a warning, but you did it!" She quickly ran up to them with a big smile on her face. The blonde-haired girl nodded without saying anything further. Anyone could tell that she had a bit of an introverted personality, or maybe she didn't want to talk much and was instead focusing on something else. "It was simply like out of a fairy tale. The fact that you could even stand up against Storm Terror in such a way was a miracle itself. You have incredible skills." The girl just kept on praising her. The group's attention, however, was soon caught by the sound of an unfamiliar voice. "That's true. Wonderful, thanks to your cooperation, we managed to bring peace to the city of Mondstadt, for now, but don't forget my brother, who was the one that took a huge part in the battle, driving Storm Terror away." Kia walked towards them while clapping. "Ah, Sir Kia! You look exhausted." Kia wryly smiled at the energetic girl's comment. "Yeah, my amazing self had fought in the battle as well. Unlike usually, I had to expend quite a bit of energy. On the other hand, you look quite well, Outrider Amber. If I may pry, who are these individuals?" Yeah. These two are travelers from afar, Lumen and Paimon." Amber turned to them and continued. "This is our cavalry captain, Kia." Kia had a thoughtful look on his face. "Travelers from afar? Is that all we know about them?" But still, they did help with fending off the Storm Terror, so it should be fine. Besides, I allowed my new little brother to enter the city of Mondstadt as well, so I shouldn't play favorites. Lumen lightly nodded at Kia out of courtesy, while focusing her gaze towards Yomite, who was leaning against a wall nearby. Amber also followed her gaze and found that it was the man who dealt the fatal blow to the Storm Terror. Although looking closely, he didn't appear to possess a vision, but was similar to Kia in some aspects. "Sir Kia, were you serious when you said he was your brother?" "Naturally, I and Yomite go way back as we've been together since birth, but then were unfortunately separated. However, fate brought us back together, and today, the duo of siblings saved the city of Mondstadt. Let the bards sing of this tale, till the end of times. The seven were generous enough to let me meet with my long-lost brother." Kia spoke emotionally. Amber stared at Kia with eyes wide open. "That's amazing! I am so glad for you, Sir Kia. Reuniting with a sibling after so long. I thought your only brother was the Master Dialect." She immediately ate up all of Kia's words and believed him completely. She didn't doubt anything that came out of his mouth, which made Yomite sneer. Lumen looked down when she heard the word sibling, and Paimon immediately knew what she was thinking about. "Paimon thinks you are worrying too much." To Paimon, your brother sounds like a very powerful person, so Paimon is pretty sure he is alive and well. She tried to raise her spirits, and to some point, it worked as Lumen thanked her afterward. Yomite didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Kia was just too much. "We have been together since birth, my ass. You wouldn't be saying that if you knew I was reborn not too long ago. Now I see what Dialect meant by trusting half of what Kia says, at best. He is just enjoying himself, but I guess I don't mind it though." He glanced at the woman who introduced herself as Lumen and noticed she was staring at him intently. It felt a bit hostile too. Wait, what have I done to her? Or is it possible that are my handsome protagonist's looks finally paying off? Did she fall in love with me at first sight when I helped her in the battle against the dragon, but is having an internal conflict inside of her mind, like in Kaguya-sama? I'm sorry though, not interest. He rejected her confession even before she said anything to him. Such was the life of the popular main protagonist, saving the city from a terrible threat known as the Storm Terror. Of course, he knew that Lumen had something against him, and didn't believe in something stupid like falling in love on first sight. He was just joking about the popular harem trope. In reality, the girl's intention was much deeper than he would have ever expected. She was hesitating whether to ask him about something or not, but decided not to, at least, for now. Yomite walked towards the group and introduced himself. "My name is Yomite, it's pleasure to meet you all." He glanced at the girl who called herself Amber and couldn't help but widen his eyes at her assets. She had a very friendly smile and had a gorgeous face. Coupled with her walnut-colored hair, she was a drop-dead beauty. The biggest pros she had, however, were most likely her perky but that was covered with rather daring short shorts, and her plump thighs, which could probably crush even a watermelon. If Yomite had to choose between a butt and breasts, he would most likely go for the butt. Or the thighs. Having big breasts might be appealing, but the reality was often disappointing. Big breasts meant not only terrible back pain, but they also get sag after the years, which doesn't look the nicest. Still, they felt nice to touch. Yomite didn't mean to stare at her too much, but out of all girls he met so far, this one was the closest to his type. Although it was a shame she looked too young. Of course, he didn't dislike younger girls, as that type was usually very energetic and adventurous. Creator's thoughts. Chapter 9: Friendship Blooms. Long story short, the traveler is searching for her brother, and I thought it might be a good idea to help her, so I brought her into the city, but then the mighty storm terror attacked, and now we are here. Oh, and she is also searching for the Anemo god, Amber explained with a grin. Kia pondered over Amber's words for a while. I see, welcome to the Mondstadt, though you haven't arrived at the best of times, I am afraid. I can understand your anguish of being separated from a family member. I am not really sure why you are searching for an Anemo god, but everyone has their secrets, right? He gazed at the traveler with one of his star-like eyes and noticed she was staring at him with hostility. Haha, relax. I won't press you for more anyway. First and foremost, I have to thank you, on behalf of all Knights of Favonius, for defending the city and offering a helping hand in the battle. Kia did a small bow. Lumen felt awkward about this kind of treatment, so she waved him off with a soft voice. We couldn't leave the situation to fester any further. Besides, I didn't help because I wanted to, but because I need your help. Fair enough. Kia laughed and turned to Yomite. Brother, your fight to defend the city against the dragon was witnessed by no small amount of citizens and knights themselves. You are bound to be recognized as a hero. As expected of my brother, you will definitely be awarded something for your bravery. A hero? I think you are overreacting, although frankly, I won't beat around the bush. I do hope to get some sort of reward. Preferably money, as I don't even have a single penny. Also, a place to stay would be nice. I don't need a title like that though, no thanks, Yomite said with a thoughtful expression. If he got that out of the way, most of his problems would be solved. Money, place to stay at, and naturally that way, also food and other things. He was really curious about the money system. Would it be the standard copper, silver, gold, platinum currency, or would it be something different? You don't have to worry, the acting Grand Master of Knights of Favonius is also definitely interested in meeting you, so I am sure you will get rewarded, together with the traveler, for assisting us. Kia replied while gazing at both Yomite and Lumen. Paimon wants a reward too. The flying fairy chimed in despite not helping with the battle at all. Kia looked troubled. Then how about a sticky honey roast? You can stuff yourself with it later. It tastes amazing, and the explosion of sweetness literally explodes in my mouth whenever I eat it. Really? Is it that good? Yay! The fairy floated around happily in the air. Yomite glanced across his shoulder at the fairy. Plushie? Flying body pillow? Either way, it was cute. Almost too cute. Yomite wondered what kind of race she was from and thought about getting one for himself. I have no idea what that is, but I have an impulsive feeling to hug and protect it. By that logic, shouldn't I get something as well? A small sack of coins would be nice. Hu Tao joined in. She was silent all this time. Despite not being much of help, I did bring 3 citizens to safety. I would like a small sack of coins, he dot. She announced proudly. Sure. Everyone gets a reward. Kia laughed. Yomite facepalmed himself, this little girl. Instead of caring about a small sum of money, she should be begging for the contract she was desperately trying to sign with the Adventurers Guild earlier. That would help her much more in the long run. He sighed and nudged her shoulder. HM? What is it? You should ask the acting Grand Master for the contract or whatever you wanted to sign as your reward. Try using your brain a little. You are right. How smart of you, my assistant. I completely forgot about that. As expected of my assistant. Hu Tao's eyes shined brightly. Assistant? Lumen murmured with curiosity. Yomite rolled his eyes. Don't listen to her. I am not her assistant. I am Yomite his Sha, a wanderer with no occupation. She is just making stuff up. She only called me that way so that we could enter the city, but we ultimately failed. In the end, Kia had to help us get in. So that was the plan at first. Interesting. Kia nodded with understanding. Oh, come on. Don't be a grumpy old man. Assistant Kun. Hu Tao was singing. You know, that's a really childish behavior, and I won't be provoked by it. It would be embarrassing if I was. Yomite confidently stated. He had hundreds of hours of experience with people that provoked and cursed him on a daily basis. Such a thing was nothing to him. Assistant Kun. Little bro. Kia joined in on the teasing. Yomite-san. Amber thought it seemed fun, so she joined in on the singing. Of course, in his world, if he were to attack someone, he would lose his job and go to prison. What's the worst that can happen here? Now listen here, you guys. Are you children? The group laughed, and even Lumen showed a small smile. It seemed like they were good people. She was glad, although she was still suspicious of Yomite due to one certain thing. After a bit of bantering, the group entered the Knights of Favonius headquarters. We are finally here. It felt like ages. Yomite looked around and noticed that several of the knights were looking at them with suspicion. But it was only to be expected. Unknown individuals usually don't just enter the headquarters. The people who do enter are usually criminals that are imprisoned in the confinement downstairs. Maybe even tortured. What is the cavalry captain thinking, inviting outsiders in? Hell if I know, it's really irresponsible. They are acting as if they are on a playground or something. Yeah, what if they try to do something? Be on guard if something happens. The knights were gossiping. The group obviously overheard their remarks but decided to ignore them. It was hard not to overhear them when they weren't being silent, to begin with. Lumen slightly frowned at the comments. Paimon saw her expression and said, Paimon will beat them up, don't worry. Let Paimon at them. The fairy was flying near Lumen's shoulder while boxing in the air. Lumen shook her head and replied, It's alright. Others aren't fazed by it either, so why should I be? Most of the people from the group ignored them, but one girl couldn't simply listen to it any longer. What kind of attitude is that, mister? Amber stepped in immediately after overhearing their discussion. These are the esteemed guests that drove Storm Terror away. Why are you being so mean? Show some respect. They did. The knights had a troubled look on their face. Yes. We are on our way to meet the acting Grand Master to reward them. So be good boys and don't be mean like that again. You are knights for the sevens. After her small outburst, she returned back to the group and Lumen thanked her. You didn't need to, but thanks. I appreciate it. She let out a sad smile. Amber put both of her hands on her hips and cheerfully replied, Any time. This Amber person feels like an older sister character. She generates that kind of energy. Yomite thought. I was about to turn and say something, but it seems like she resolved it herself. Well, it seems like they are wary of us despite driving the Storm Terror away. Some of them look out of shape, and yet they still dare to talk behind someone's back. What a bunch of dumbass. Yomite talked loudly enough for the knights to hear while shaking his head. The knights frowned but didn't say anything back. Kia heard his remark, halted his footsteps, and let out a sneer. True, but no need to say it out loud. A lot of knights here are sensitive to hear the truth. To tell you the truth, most of the knights here are only trainees, as most of our knights went on an expedition with Grand Master Varka. I really do appreciate people like him. I wonder when they will return. Grand Master Varka? Yomite mumbled. A new name popped up. The Grand Master Varka, a man among men, also called Knight of Boris or by his enemies, the Titan of the Knights of Favonius and most likely the strongest person in the city of Mondstadt, has departed half a year ago on an expedition and has yet to return. Hell, where did he go? Hu Tao asked. I might sound like a douche, but this is classified info. Kia smiled wryly at her pouting face and continued. Unfortunately, no can do. Well, I can tell you that he took all the best men with him, leaving us with these rejects. Oof, that was harsh. Yomite thought, but a huge smile was plastered on his lips. He glanced at Kia and asked, Kia, there is something I've been meaning to ask you ever since I met you. Kia waved his hand in affirmation. Go on, brother. There was this one weird thing that has been bugging me ever since I came here. You are the cavalry captain, right? He nodded. Yes, the best cavalry captain if I may add, although it's not like there are any other besides me. I see, so, where are the cavalries? There should be horses, soldiers or rather, knights riding horses, right? At least that's how I remember the definition of cavalries. This was probably the thing he paid most attention to as it was sitting on his mind the entire time. When he came here, he saw a carriage being pulled by some sort of lizard instead of a horse. Horses. Mounts. Something he can use to travel. He wanted to ride on something. This was an ice-sky world, meaning there might be things like traveling lizards, ground dragons, flying traveling companions, and of course horses and donkeys, maybe even camels. He always dreamed of riding horses. Back in his old world, he only got to see horses a few times during his life. Horses were really rare to come by. He would even dare to say that seeing horses live in the flesh when you live in modern Japan is close to impossible, almost like winning a lottery ticket, and riding one is even more impossible. Seeing that he is called the cavalry captain, that must mean there are some horses here. Yomite concluded. Kia, where are the horses? About that. He had trouble explaining. Well, you see, all of the horses were sent together with the cavalries, to the said expedition of Grand Master Varka. All of them? Wait, if all of the cavalries were sent on the expedition, as a cavalry captain, shouldn't you be there with them, or am I wrong? Kia started sweating profusely. Well, you see. He started scratching his hand, feeling nervous, and Yomite knew he hit the bullseye. Seeing Kia this anxious was a first for him. Although he looked nervous in front of Dialek, Yomite knew he was just pretending, but this was different, and something inside of him has awakened. Kia, dear brother, spit it out. Yomite really felt like bullying him right now to get back at him from the previous stunt he has done. Well, I overslept, and they left without me. Silence. No one spoke. It was so silent that if a pin fell on the ground, it was definitely going to be heard by everyone present. It was silent, yes, until a certain girl blew up. Sir Kia, didn't you say that the reason you didn't go was that Grand Master Varka gave you an important mission in Mondstadt? Was that a lie? I can't believe you. Amber was furious. Did I say something like that? I can't quite remember now. I will tell Acting Grand Master Jean. You are a very bad boy. Even worse than the knights from earlier. Yes, sorry, although she already knows about it. That doesn't mean you can just push it away like that. It's your responsibility to do something about it. What if Grand Master Varka needs you? While Amber was violently abusing Kia with words, Yomite observed the corridor they were in. He had to admit, the building was quite grand. There was a large hallway that acted as a huge room you would see upon entering. There were doors on each side of the building, and even stairs that led up to the second and maybe even third floor. The building itself was made of stone bricks that brought a familiar medieval feel to Yomite. Still, he was quite disappointed there were no horses, but he will definitely see some later on during his travels. After apologizing profusely to Amber, Kia led them through one of the many doors that were present within the hallway. The door he picked was precisely the door that led to the Grand Master's office. The room itself was composed of mainly wooden furniture of decent quality. At the back of the room were a few rows of shelves, full of books, making it seem like a small library of some kind due to the vast quantity of them stacked across the shelves, and a few of them laying on the table. The windows were tinted just enough for the light to permeate inside without being uncomfortable. In the room were two women. The first one was standing near a table, while holding a book and muttering to herself under her breath. She was a mature woman, presumably reaching her 40s, yet still preserving a youthful charm enough to claim any man as her own. Her fair skin and gorgeous green eyes with brown hair made Yomite feel like he struck gold. Coupled with her witch-like attire, purple-white dress with black gloves, large witch hat, black stockings and high heels, it made her very attractive in his eyes. A MILF has appeared. A magician MILF. She really knows how to dress, that's for sure, and she also has a vision. Seems like everyone around me is chosen by a god. The vision was clasped on the collar of her dress, once again different in design from other visions he has seen, with a purple color as the main theme. The other woman was tall, athletic, and just like the first one, pleasing to eyes. Blonde hair tied in ponytail, and blue eyes simply cliché yet beauty to behold. Yomite would guess her age to be around 20s, and despite sitting down, anyone could feel she carried herself with dignity. She wore a white shirt with blue tailcoat attached to it, and white tights embroidered with gold diamond dot pattern. A bright green light shone from beside her waist. It was yet another vision. So this is the acting Grand Master. Well, I heard it was a woman, but hell, does every girl in this goddamned world have to look so good? What is up with this SSS class beauty department? Not only that, this one has a vision too. The dignified woman smiled and with her left hand, allowed her guests to take a seat. Welcome to the city of Mondstadt. My name is Jean, the active Grand Master of Knights of Favonius. It's a pleasure to meet you. Chapter 11, Rewards. Kia stepped forward and started explaining the current situation to the acting Grand Master of Knights of Favonius, Jean. From the situation near the gate to the storm terror attack and so on. They had a lot to discuss, and as mentioned previously, Kia wanted to give them some form of a reward for their heroic actions. During that, Yomite stole a few glances at the witch in front of him. She was silently reading a book while listening to the conversation. It didn't seem like it interested her much, or rather, the book itself was more intriguing than what Kia had to say. He peered at her secretly, but not too long as to not seem rude. He can appreciate beauty without acting like a disgusting pervert. She was his type, so acting like a creep was not the way to go here if he wanted to strike the gold. Top-notch figure, tall, mature woman with an insane sex appeal. It seems like coming to this city was a really good idea after all. Yomite pondered. As if she could read his thoughts, the witch lifted her head and noticed he was gazing at her. She teasingly smiled and sent him a playful wink. Yomite smiled in return, and for a while they just stared at each other in silence. Hu Tao noticed that the woman was staring at Yomite and nudged him. Hey, is that lady your acquaintance? Because she is looking this way. Without breaking eye contact with the witch, Yomite replied silently. Nope, I said I was a wanderer, right? There is no way I would have ever met her. We are just getting along. We are just greeting each other, nothing more. Hu Tao glanced at the witch, making her lose focus and look away from Yomite. She gave Hu Tao a friendly smile and a small wave. And once it was over, I brought them all straight here. I see. Thank you for your thorough explanation. Kia was finally done with explaining, so he stepped back and awaited any further orders or questions from the acting Grand Master. Jean steered her gaze and spoke. Mondstadt welcomes you, windborne travelers. I've already introduced myself earlier, so I believe there is no need for such small formalities. She pointed her hand towards the woman next to her and said, This is Lisa, our resident librarian. Lisa slightly bowed and asked in a teasing voice. Oh, you sweeties, are you perhaps here to help us out? You are all so adorable. The tone of her voice changed as she continued. Sadly, your timing is regrettable. Storm terror has caused quite a ruckus in the region of Mondstadt since its recent resurgence. Simply put, Mondstadt's elemental sphere and ley lines are now akin to a yarn ball in the paws of a kitten. For a mage, things couldn't get any worse. My skin is one elemental particle away from a full-blown breakout. Lisa sighed while examining her skin. I think that you are good as you are now. Yomite replied, gazing at her unashamed. Era, thank you for the compliment, handsome. She once again sent a wink his way. Both of them were flirting with each other, disregarding the others around them. Cough. Jean cleared her throat and spoke. Travelers. Lumen, was it? If it weren't for the interference of the storm terror, the Knights of Favonius would have better ways to help you than putting up a few missing posters. We simply ask that you repose in Mondstadt while we help you seek out your brother for you. Lumen was touched by the good nature of Jean. Thank you. I really should help out somehow as well. Finding my brother is my wish. But for it to be fulfilled, I need the help of everyone I can find. Paimon floated around and announced. Paimon shall help as well. Everyone can count on Paimon to beat the bad guys up and steal their treasure. In that case, I, the 77th director of the Wanxing Funeral Parlor, shall help with something as well. Of course, after appropriate compensation was given. Everyone was getting excited, and then there was Yomite. Hey, I kind of wish to get some reward money and to find myself a place to sleep in if you don't mind. Jean shook her head and replied. Of course not. Jean reached behind her to something that resembled a safe, but it looked like it operated with magical power, or rather, resonated with her vision. The safe opened, revealing quite a few bags of money. She pulled 2 bags out of the vault and handed them to Yomite. Here, both of these bags are 1 million more each. Hopefully it will serve you well. As for the lodging currently, the inn operating in Mondstadt is closed down, but I have a place in mind. It's a small house not too far away from here, although there is a small problem. Small problem? What kind of problem are we talking about? Yomite asked. Jean sighed and replied. Well, you see, there is a seal of some kind, blocking the pathway, so I wasn't sure whether to talk to you about it or not, but best just forget the place. I will try to see if the inn doesn't want to reopen. I see, a seal, that's quite troublesome. He had no power that could help him break through a seal, so he was back to square one, trying to find himself a place to stay. Wait, but now that I think about it, he turned to Hu Tao, who was jumping around like a dog waiting for her reward in the form of a contract with the Adventurers Guild. Hu Tao, you seal away evil spirits, correct? Is there a way for you to also unseal something? For example, the seal that was mentioned just now. Hu Tao shook her head and replied. Unfortunately, I have no experience in this kind of thing. Also, the sealing ceremony for the dead is a completely different kind of sealing ritual. I'm sorry I am of no help. Go figure. Well, at least I gave it a try. What to do now? I did get the money. Should I just leave the town to search for another settlement, or a city where I can stay at? Kia pondered for a while before replying. In that case, why not just stay in my home? I get kind of lonely sometimes. Yomite thanked him, but it simply wouldn't work. Hu Tao also needs a place to stay at, considering she plans to stay here for a while, and even sign up her contract with the guild. But thank you for your offer. Why is everything so complicated? Can't I just summon myself a new house with some kind of overpowered magic spell? Chapter 12, Temples of the Four Winds. Hu Tao dashed towards Yomite and slapped his back a few times. What a kind assistant Kun you are, thanks for being concerned for my well-being. She honestly meant her praise, although she said it in a form of teasing. Seeing that she was still hitting his back with her small hands, Yomite sighed and replied. Naturally, I can't leave a lowly alone on the streets at night, while I would live comfortably in someone's house. It would leave a bad taste in my mouth. Hu Tao became unusually quiet. Yomite used the forbidden word just to make her shut up for a bit. He needed some time to collect his thoughts, and he couldn't focus with the whole hyperactive, eccentric personality of Hu Tao. I can get more rewards if I were to help them with stuff, and later they might even reopen the inn. I also have many questions regarding the currency in this world, so I guess sticking around with whatever they will be doing won't be that bad. But it seems like I won't be able to avoid sleeping outdoors either way. Yomite mentally sighed. He gazed at Jean and asked, So, what's the plan now? Jean widened her eyes and graciously nodded. With Storm Terror's direct attack just a few moments ago, we may actually have a chance to cut this problem off at the source. It seems like Lisa has found out the source of Storm Terror's power with her detection magic. After we are done with that, we can search for your brother. Her gentle gaze fell on Lumen, and the latter didn't know what to say. Lumen felt conflicted. She honestly felt wrong to just leave the search in the hands of everyone else. It was her brother after all. She had already been looking for him for a good while now, so just giving up and letting others do the work all of a sudden left a bitter taste in her mouth. Is that so? Then are we good to go? Kia inquired as everyone's gaze fell on him. Lisa nodded and explained. Through the magic thread, I found out that the source is located in the abandoned Four Winds temples. Storm Terror's ability to whip out these kinds of storms can be attributed to it drawing the power directly from those temples. Jean nodded in agreement. Our current objective is to deal with the 3 of the 4 temples. I trust that everyone understands why we are only dealing with 3 of them, right? Paimon doesn't. No idea. Nope. No. Paimon blinked in confusion, while Lumen and Yomite just shrugged their shoulders. Hu Tao was in the world of her own, almost impossible to tell if she was paying attention or not. It looked like none of them knew anything about it. Well, if they only needed to deal with 3 of the 4, then it was better. At least they saved up some time. Jean sighed as she remembered that half of the people here weren't locals. Seeing that Jean was in a helpless situation, Kia decided to help out a bit. Don't worry, I will explain it on the way. Amber also beamed and agreed with what Kia said. I will explain everything as well. Don't be shy, just ask me anything. Following which she saluted. Jean thanked Kia and Amber, her gaze growing serious. Outsiders, Knights of Favonius, time is against us. The storm is rampant. We will get nowhere with maintaining our defensive position. Tens of people were injured. Although no one has died yet, the buildings are in shambles and the people are scared. We need to take the initiative and act before the situation escalates any further. If it goes to that point, then we might not even be able to stop it. After her speech, everyone got some time to get ready. It seems like the kids are full of energy. Well, see you at the gate. Lisa left the room to make herself herbal tea so that she can relax a bit before their departure. The meeting point was in front of the gates of Mondstadt in exactly 1 hour. To stop the Storm Terror siege, 2 parties of skilled individuals were formed. The 2 parties would go to one of the 4 winds to eliminate the elemental flows left within them, and once they were done, they would wait for each other at the final temple so that they can take care of it together. The group meeting was disbanded and everyone left to prepare. Yomite and Hu Tao found themselves on the empty streets of Mondstadt, wandering around. So what do we do now? Hu Tao asked while playing hide and seek with the apparition that was hiding behind her ponytails. Yomite shrugged his shoulders slightly and replied, We could do a lot of things actually. The right question is, what to do first? If they were about to go on an expedition, then that meant he would most likely meet some hostile mobs like slimes, wolves, or goblins. An appropriate weapon was a must in these situations. There was also the matter of food. He was starving, and also the inn. He planned on checking the inn out himself and ask around if they couldn't actually sleep there, even if the rent was a bit higher than normal. For now, let's go to see the blacksmith. Okay, Hu Tao replied. As they arrived in front of the smithy, all they could find was the disciple that was bullied all the time. The master was nowhere to be seen. How unfortunate. Should we come back later? Yomite was about to turn away when the disciple noticed them. Hey, they're customers, what can I do for you? His voice sounded tragic, almost helpless to sell something. TCH. Yomite turned around. Where is your master? Well, master told me to work overtime. He is currently busy collecting ores around the Storm Terror's lair. Storm Terror's lair? Isn't that the lair of that dragon? Seems like he is not afraid of death. Who knows? Probably not. He is a strong man after all. The disciple said in admiration. Yomite nodded in understanding. I see, show me your weapon arsenal then, preferably something like a 2-handed sword. The disciple immediately gathered all kinds of blades and let Yomite swing them around a few times. What's the price for a sword like this? Let me see. It's 600 mora per weapon, my dear customer. Yomite internally frowned as he thought about the price. Isn't that kinda cheap? I do have 2 million of this mora thing. That either means the sword is too shit, or that the acting guild master Jean actually gave me a lot of money as a reward. I would need to check the prices of other things first to understand. While Yomite was busy trying out swords, Hu Tao was sitting on a bench nearby, playing with her hair. Assistant Quinn, when will you be done? I am getting bored and I hate boredom. She exclaimed but didn't get a reply. She called for him again, while kicking her legs up and down. Assistant Quinn? Hu Tao, didn't you want to replenish your water before coming here? Also, go and grab something for us to eat while you are at it. I am starving. There is plenty of stuff for us to do, and I don't have time to do everything by myself, so you should also do something. Yomite replied while trying out some shoulder armor, but it didn't seem like they had his size. Okie dokie. Hu Tao left, and Yomite finally had a peace of mind. The disciple was curious about their relationship, so he asked, Is that your daughter perhaps? Yomite was caught off guard by the weird question, but then he noticed there was a list of sales on a nearby table. Is there a father-daughter sale perhaps? Naturally, 30% off. It's my daughter. Chapter 13, Heading Out. Yomite left the smithy with a smile on his face. He bought a pair of shoulder protectors and a 2-handed sword, or how the residents of this world called it, a claymore. Yomite knew that this claymore was of pretty poor quality, but seeing as there were no better options, he picked the best-looking one. It was an expendable weapon after all. He even got a 30% off on both the weapon and the shoulder protectors, so it was all worth it as he only spent about 1,000 mora on all of the items. The weight of the weapon was ideal, and he even got something like a scabbard with it. Once he paid for the things with mora, Yomite asked about the types of currencies in this world. Will it be copper, silver, gold, platinum, or will it be something else? Nope. Schultz, the disciple of the mighty blacksmith, explained that there were apparently 2 main types of currencies in this world. There were also a few side currencies, although not many people used them. It turned out it was something completely different from what he had in mind. Mora and Primo Gem were the main batches. Mora was used in every city, every part of the world. You could buy anything with it, from housing to food to weapons. Primo Gem, on the other hand, was very special. From what he said, it was an ancient currency useful for people with visions. However, it was pretty useless to others. Apparently, you could use a certain amount of Primo Gems to make your vision stronger. So your power level would basically jump by a huge mile. Yomite already saw what a vision can do. In one instance he was almost beheaded, and the other had enough magical power to penetrate a dragon if Kia managed to hit it. But that wasn't really the goal there, as he just wanted Yomite to get aboard the dragon. Just how strong would a vision be if it was upgraded by the Primo Gems? Could the power he received from Sia also be upgraded? He had to conduct research later on, but right now, he was starving. I am hungry. Where is she at? Yomite pondered as he leaned on the door of the closed inn that Jean mentioned before. He went to check or maybe make some sort of deal with the owner of the inn, but they were indeed closed down. It was empty, as if they fled. Probably due to the Storm Terror's attack. Geez, I am starving. Just then, Hu Tao walked from behind him, holding apples, other kinds of fruits, and what appeared to be meat on sticks in her hands. I bought food. Let's eat and wait for others, she announced with a drawl. Her stomach must have been just as empty as his. I thought you were lost. He could finally satisfy his hunger. He ate the meat vigorously and had to admit it was delicious. Good job, Hu Tao-chan. He praised her for bringing it to him. Upon hearing his words, Hu Tao almost dropped the food on the ground out of disgust. Assistant Kuan, that was really repulsive. Please refrain from calling me like that. She felt a chill down her spine. Seeing him suddenly act all friendly and happy and not grumpy made her feel weird. Geez, you are so hard to understand, she huffed. Yomite scoffed. She gets to call me whatever she wants but doesn't want me to do the same. So much for my new daughter, what a brat. He showed a thin smile. Ah, now that I remember. He pulled out a few coins from his sack. He wasn't sure how much she paid for everything, but he handed her 1,000 mora in return because after all, a part of that was also his food and she paid it off of her own budget. Thank you. Payment received. Don't make it sound like I just paid you for some questionable services. No worries. No worries. I am old enough, she said with a mischievous grin. That doesn't make it better. Yomite was getting lightheaded from her. It was a really troublesome child. He was wondering how long it would take till he fell over and died from exhaustion while dealing with her. Nah, I can't afford to do that, or else she would laugh at me. He could already imagine him in his soul form, ready to pass on in peace, only for him to be kidnapped, held prisoner by her, telling him bad jokes on a daily basis, and teasing him about the way he died. Foohoo! Assistant Kun! Good morning! You promised me to go fishing next week, but you got a heart attack today. Too bad. Well, at least even after your death you are keeping the promise of collecting worms. Batum TSS. Funny, right? Got you there, didn't I? Just thinking about it made him pissed. At this rate, I want to live as long as I can to not meet this dumbass. They were about to leave the town when Hu Tao stopped to look at something. Yomite had a bad feeling. He followed her gaze and saw that she was looking at the Adventurers Guild. Oh God, not again. He spoke with a slight frown. Hu Tao, please don't. He didn't want to see another desperate attempt to make a deal. She looked back at him with a smile. Don't worry. Don't worry. The acting Grand Master said she would resolve this for me after all. I was just thinking if we should make a party or not. A party? That might actually be interesting. There might be quite a few benefits. Hu Tao nodded and replied. It's actually very beneficial. Normally you complete quests and get a reward. But in a party you can get twice as much money for each party member. Isn't that kind of abusable? He frowned. It seems like a very dangerous thing for them to do. What if someone makes a party of 50 people and completes 10 quests daily? Wouldn't they bankrupt in a few hours? No, silly. Of course, there is a rule to balance things out. They make much more money from the materials and from the clients posting these commissions. Besides, there is a rule that says that no matter how many members there are, you can only get this bonus up to 4 members. Hu Tao explained. It's weird, but I understand. Being called silly by Hu Tao herself made Yomite question reality. Chapter 14. Setting up a party. So let's go make a party. Yay! Hu Tao dashed ahead, seemingly teleporting from her spot. Wait up! Yomite followed closely behind. Not even a few seconds later they found themselves in front of the Adventurers Guild. The black-haired beauty narrowed her eyes when she saw Hu Tao and immediately raised her hand. I am sorry, we don't wish to make a deal, please see yourself out. Hu Tao was about to reply but Yomite went ahead and interrupted her. We are actually here to register as a party if that's alright? I am quite unfamiliar with the procedure, so can I ask you to explain? There was not much time left for them to meet in front of the gate, so he wanted to quickly get it over it without wasting time. He wasn't aware of how much time had passed as he didn't have a watch, but he could roughly tell by counting. Oh, excuse me then. The woman sat herself straight and continued with a professional smile. Ad Astra Abasask. Welcome to the Adventurers Guild. Abasta, what? Yomite tried his best to pronounce the weird sentence but didn't manage to do it. It felt like his tongue wasn't designed the way to pronounce it properly. It was like a tongue twister. Abastra Abasask means, to the stars and abyss with boldness. I am Catherine, the receptionist here at the Adventurers Guild. The Adventurers Guild is an organization that was set up to support all of Teyvat's adventurers, all across the 7 nations, in hopes of establishing good and healthy relationship. I see. Is there a payment to form a party or not? He asked while reminiscing about countless novels that had that kind of setting. Catherine pulled out a paper and a pen from within a drawer and handed it to him. Nope. Forming party is completely free, but you must sign the number of your party members, the names of your party members, and the name of your party on this paper. Yomite quickly filled out the paper form, and the last remaining thing to do was to name the affiliated group. What should we call it? He didn't feel like coming up with a name, so he pulled the pin on the grenade and asked Hu Tao for some suggestions, knowing they might be terrible. And Hu Tao was more than happy to oblige. Let's call it the funeral party. Yomite felt a headache coming his way. Listen, Hu Tao, the words funeral and party shouldn't go together in any circumstances. He knew it will be a disaster, but oh well, he brought it upon himself. Any other suggestions? Hu Tao tried to think hard. It took her a few seconds. Assistant Kun's and Director's Ghostly Adventurers Party. Yomite frowned and thought, something about the name Ghostly irks me. It's weirdly familiar to another word. It sounds like something stupid and annoying, but I can't quite put the finger on it. Anyway. Rejected. Next. Yomite was getting impatient. He was also weirdly surprised he just ignored the assistant part. Then what about Harbingers of Death, filling the world of darkness with bright light of hope? It's really cool. That's too Chuyuni. Sounds embarrassing. How did this even come up? How about? No. Hu Tao was disappointed. Why do you have to reject everything? Then why not just call it Yomite's Party? If you don't want the name to be flashy, it seems ideal enough. Yomite considered this since the beginning, but he wasn't sure whether she would be happy with it. Alright, let's just call it that way for now, and once we manage to think of something interesting, we will change it, okay? Hu Tao agreed and Yomite wrote the name of the group on the paper. Catherine checked the paper form thoroughly and nodded. Good. Here are your 4 daily tasks. You will receive money and for some quests, even items. You don't have to worry about not completing them. The only demerit is that you won't get a daily 4 quests completion reward bonus. Yomite took the paper from her hands and looked through a list. Collect 4 Sunsecias. Bring 8 pieces of pork. Defeat 5 Anemo slimes. Mine 3 chunks of iron. Slimes, huh? At least they have a monster I recognize. Hopefully it won't be a powerful demon lord that will insta-kill me. If that's everything you needed, then I bid you farewell, adventurers. And thank you for registering in the Adventurers Guild. Catherine bowed. Yomite thanked her and left with Hu Tao. Near the Adventurers Guild was a place with chairs so that guests could enjoy the food of Good Hunter's restaurant. Lumen finally had enough money to buy herself and Paimon something to eat after a long time. Lumen stared at the platter of golden perfection in front of her. Paimon immediately materialized out of thin air with a squeal of glee and begun to drool. Some of Paimon's drool even got onto Lumen's white dress, which earned her a karate chop to the head. Ouch. Paimon is sorry. But Paimon can't hold herself back any further. It's been 3 days since we've eaten something. Paimon is dying. Lumen's stomach growled in agreement. Living in the wilderness was tough for someone like her. She could cook on the manual stove she stole from some hilichurls before, but her cooking skills weren't exactly plausible. Back home, her brother was the one that cooked most of the time, and even now she regrets she never tried to get into it. Paimon's eyes glazed at the food in front of her. The famed moon pies. Paimon shall taste you first. No more burned food. Paimon's been badgering her about trying these ever since they reached the city of Mondstadt. Lumen was hesitant as stockpiling more was more important and they could just catch a fish or something, but she was also interested in higher class food that wasn't burned down to crisp and cinders from the stove. Her talent in cooking wasn't actually that good. Scratch it. It was bad, terrible, horrible. At long last, Paimon's mouth will be too preoccupied with eating to spout random, irrelevant food trivia. It's a shame that Paimon once again escaped her inevitable fate of becoming emergency food, but no matter. The day of reckoning will soon be upon her. Lumen thought. She didn't mean it seriously and usually said it as a joke, but looking at Paimon from this distance, she could actually picture her as a flying steak. Just as Paimon was about to take a bite out of the perfect food, Lumen brought Paimon up close to her with a hug and playfully nommed on her cheek with her lips. Sometimes she just couldn't resist her cuteness, and just wanted to squeeze her tight. She was like a cute small animal that was capable of communicating, or like a cute toddler. She must be protected at all costs. What is the meaning of this? Paimon hopes you are not serious about eating me. Paimon is a friend of yours. A companion. A beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. Chapter 15. Boiling Feelings. Lumen put Paimon away so she could eat in peace, and as soon as she raised her knife, ready to dig in, Yomite and Hu Tao appeared in her field of vision. Lumen eyed him with dismay because she just knew that their appearance meant her lunch will be interrupted, and her stomach has been growling since 3 days ago, when Paimon made her scale the hilichurl towers in order to search for a treasure. "Hello, is this seat taken?" Yomite asked while gazing at Lumen and the precious thing stuffing her cheeks. It was simply adorable. "If I say yes, will you go away?" Lumen responded, her hunger making her a bit more cranky and blunt than she wanted to sound. In reality, she wanted to ask him a couple of questions and hoped that he would stay. Perhaps this was also why Paimon was usually increasingly more annoying in the hours right before their meals. If that was the case, then Lumen needed to seriously look into what kind of snacks she should buy for her with her remaining mora to keep Paimon's chattering to a minimum. "I would, but unfortunately it seems like you have somewhat of a hostile relationship towards me and I want to know why. We met half an hour ago for the first time. What's up with the enmity?" Yomite sat down across from her. Before Lumen could even blink, Hu Tao snatched a moon pie from Paimon's platter, looking smug and entirely unrepentant about the fact that she just stole her food. "Hey!" Paimon screeched indignantly and stamped her feet in midair. "Get your filthy hands off my moon pies! We worked hard for that." Lumen nodded in agreement, frowning at Hu Tao as she shamelessly took a large bite of her moon pie. "Wow, to think it tasted this good. I should really buy it again in the future," Hu Tao hummed as she took another bite. "Hey! Don't act as if you bought it. This is stealing. Stop it!" Paimon screamed as she was holding on to Hu Tao's hat while Hu Tao ate her food. "This is good, give me another one." Hu Tao ignored her jab and reached for her plate. Luckily, Paimon rushed forward and slapped her hand away. Hu Tao held her hands up in a placating gesture. "Well, it was a lovely meeting with you guys. I regret that I have matters I must attend to, so I must be off. Till next time." She winked at Yomite, and then, with a dramatic swish of her ponytails, she departed, but not with empty hands. "Good riddance," Paimon huffed. "Wait." She looked back at the table, but her platter was nowhere to be seen. "My moon pies! Wait, you thief! Paimon will eat you once she catches you." Paimon flew after the running Hu Tao, swearing she would get her revenge, and finally it was quiet. Only Lumen and Yomite were left alone. "So, now that we are finally alone, let's talk," Yomite said as he crossed his legs. This was, of course, his plan all along. To get rid of the obstacles named Cutie Paimon and hyperactive Hu Tao. He wanted to have a quick discussion with the person in front of him. With Lumen. He was 95% sure of who she was. Ever since the beginning when she showed up, saying she needed help to find her lost brother, immediately reminded him of the characters from the story the goddess Sia mentioned to him, and coincidences like that are rare. But there was still this 5% chance he was wrong, but for the most part, he was likely to be right. If it was confirmed, then she was without a doubt one of the twins, and the main character of this story. Now, how much should he tell her, or keep a secret from her? Should he even tell her anything at all? It wasn't his job, nor did he accept some kind of mission from the goddess. Sia only mentioned he could interfere, to help her, but she didn't say it as an order, or something that he needed to do. The choice was up to him, and him alone. Lumen didn't say anything, choosing to turn back to her meal instead of answering his question. "Look at me when I am talking to you." He raised his voice a bit. This was important, and he didn't feel like playing around. Lumen sighed and looked at the flying figure of her friend disappearing while chasing Hu Tao behind his back. "I assume you've planned this out. You made a perfect place for this, so you probably already know what's coming. Good then, I will begin. Where is my brother? Have you seen him?" Yomite shook his head and replied, "I have no idea how your brother looks, nor where he is, nor his name. What's your relationship to the unknown god? Where do I find her?" She inquired with a deadly gaze. "Nothing, no idea who she is nor where she is. Now let me be the one who asks, why are you hostile to me? I did nothing wrong. That is..." Lumen bit her lip. He was right. She was acting hostile to him ever since she met him more than an hour ago. Normal people would usually ignore when someone was talking bad about them or didn't like them, but he just went in and immediately asked her what was wrong. Why was she acting like that towards him? And she didn't know. She didn't know the answer to that. Seeing his ability triggered something inside of her mind, the tragedy of separation from her brother, her only family. His ability looked like a cube, while the unknown god, who separated her from her sibling, also had an ability related to a cube, but the color wasn't even remotely similar. The same could be said about the abilities. So at this point, she finally came to a realization that she was just being rude. All this time. "I am sorry, I simply don't know what to do anymore." Lumen pursued her lips. Her expression struggled to stay in her neutral, expressionless state, but her brow and the corners of her lips were faintly straining in a way she would not normally permit. She looked down and let out a strained voice from her throat. "It's too much on me. I am hungry, I have no money, I have to take care of Paimon as well because she is a dear friend and that's just the way I am. I can't abandon her despite my difficulties. I can't find my brother. I don't know how to cook. I don't have a place to stay at. I am simply hopeless." A wry smile, a truly wry smile appeared on her face. She couldn't hold up her head. Lumen started slowly opening up her heart to a stranger she basically just met, not knowing whether he cared, whether he would laugh, or just leave her there for good. She needed something. She needed to talk to someone about the things she was going through, about the difficulties. She didn't want to bother Paimon. Her heart was screaming, desperately begging for some sort of support. A pillar that can help her, so that she wouldn't completely break down. Yomite could feel the vortex of uncertainty, bewilderment, pain, and hesitation swirling inside of her. He didn't want to admit it, but the various things she just said to him, with that pitiful expression, were greatly, powerfully, fiercely shaking his heart. No human was emotionless. Even if you tried to hide it, there is still at least one thing, one certain thing that makes you feel sad or makes you show some sort of emotions. So what should he do now? Chapter 16. Resolved. Welcome new party member. And Paimon, yay. Lumen wasn't sure if it was okay. She wasn't sure if she should have done something like this. To tell a random stranger about her problems, but she couldn't hold it in anymore. She had to tell someone. Disaster had struck and after she woke up, she was alone and lost for a long time. Then, she met Paimon by fishing her out of the pond. Her first friend, that helped her through difficult times. Unconsciously, she was leaning on Paimon for support, no matter how funny it seemed, and she knew she had to stop. But now, once again, she sought some sort of pillar of support that would encourage her or at the very least help her deal with some of the stuff she was going through so that she wouldn't be handling everything by herself. Lumen was short of breath after venting all of the gloomy, miserable, and painful things that are tearing her up from inside. She lifted her gaze and glanced at Yomite, who was deep in thought. She was a bit surprised, as she expected him to mock her. The moment he started talking to her about why she was hostile to him, he came out as that kind of type that likes to prey on the weak. Ah, fuck it. Lumen was startled by his sudden outburst and wiped her tears away. Yomite looked at her plate full of food that was slowly starting to get cold and said, "You should eat that. Didn't you say you were hungry? Just eat." She did as she was told. She picked up her knife and resumed eating. After being starved for 3 days, this moon pie gave her the energy she needed the most right now. Okay, look, I have a proposition. Lumen was silently eating as she asked in between her chewing. What is it? Yomite folded his arms and replied. You will join my party. So far, it's currently me, Hu Tao, and the new addition will be you. With the Broken Adventurers Guild party system, you can easily gain enough money to survive for months on end. As you are the third person, the benefits will triple easily, making us a fortune. Finishing some basic quests shouldn't be too hard. It would be embarrassing if we weren't able to complete basic quests with 2 Ice Guy protagonists, and Hu Tao, who also has a pretty strong vision. There should be no issue with some slimes or wolves. Yomite concluded as he reached out his hand towards one of the bags full of mora he received from the acting Grand Master, Jean. He decided to give her half of the earnings from the bag. He put up about 500k mora on top of the table, and with a solemn voice said, You helped me distract Storm Terror during his attack, also damaged him quite a bit, so I feel like only asking for posters of your brother is kind of nonsense, especially when you are in such a tight situation you described earlier. You need a better kind of reward. Take this. Lumen widened her eyes at his kind gesture. She was in disbelief from the sheer number of mora. Obviously, she was in the room when the acting Grand Master gave him the money, so she knew he received quite a bit, but seeing it in person was a different thing. I can't accept this. He looked at her hesitant gaze and sighed. Just how much of a goody two-shoes can she be? She is barely surviving in this unknown world for God knows how long. The last thing she should be focusing on is modesty. Fine. If you want to be so stubborn and don't want to take it for free, then I will lend it to you. You will pay me back with an interest of 100k, no, 200k more by the end of this year, and if not, I will be taking Paimon hostage. That might change your mind. If you won't even accept that, then I will just leave the money here, laying comfortably on this table. I bet someone will eventually show up and get it for themselves. Yomite scoffed as he stood up and tucked the chair in. Lumen knew she was in a dire need of money, yet she still hesitated. So stupid. He sighed, shaking his head, and somehow brushed off the tearful and thankful gaze of the girl in front of him as he glanced at her once more. Right. Geez, what a drag. He thought, but it was all worth in the end. I just need to steal myself one more person for the bonus to quadruple. Unfortunately, I don't think Paimon would count as the 4th member. Once I get the last member, I might be able to get back what I lost just now, within a week, maybe quicker. He read the rewards of the daily quests, and was pleasantly surprised at the amount of mora they will receive for the completion of each one. This way he could earn at least 50k mora each day he completed these dailies, not to mention the other quests that were laying around on the board as no one wanted to do them. The quests were piling up, almost no one wanted to go adventuring due to Storm Terror's attack. As such, the rewards were also raised. I am going to be filthy rich soon. He let out a small grin. Lumen noticed his evil grin and wasn't able to tell if he was actually a bad person or not, but he did want to help her, so he couldn't be that bad, right? Alright. I am off to the Adventurers Guild to sign you into my team. He glanced at the incoming flying fairy and knew that his time to discuss stuff has ended. Before he left, he held up a finger and spoke with a buoyant tone. This way you will be working for me, in my party to repay the money I gave you. Remember, I will be taking Paimon hostage later. He winked and left the area, heading straight to the guild. Well, it was not like he knew what year it was right now or when it ended, and he doubted Lumen knew either. He just wanted to get her a bit motivated so that he can get something out of her. Lumen let out a sweet smile as she watched his parting figure. He definitely isn't a bad person. Just then, a tired Paimon returned, heavily breathing. This thief had so much energy, she escaped. She glanced at the table and noticed the amount of mora. Whoa! Where did you get all of this mora from? She inquired with her small eyes. We are joining Yomite's party, and he gave me this for helping with the Storm Terror. She didn't mention the Paimon kidnapping thing as she was sure he was just joking. Paimon rested her hand on her small chin and spoke. Seems suspicious. The tattoo better not try something or else he will have to deal with Paimon. In any case, we have money now and Paimon's food is gone. Can you buy Paimon something, please? She outstretched her small hands. Lumen nodded and once again pulled her into an embrace. Only if you let me recharge my energy like this once in a while, maybe on a daily basis. She rested her chin on Paimon's small head and nuzzled against her. Paimon doesn't mind hugging and acting friendly, so Paimon thinks you can do as you like. As long as you don't eat Paimon, that is. Chapter 17, Hu Tao, no. After adding another member to his party, Yomite met up with Hu Tao in front of the city. He was satisfied by her acting and thought she would want something as a reward, but she said that teasing the small fairy kid was so much fun that she doesn't need anything. At one point she also managed to run away from her, then creep from behind her and scare her so badly her wings stopped working and she fell down into a flower pot. Yomite just wryly smiled at that. After this quest was completed, they would be adventuring in the same party, and he couldn't even begin to imagine the amount of stress and pranks she might pull on the poor Paimon. Well, Lumen kind of sold her out in a sense, feels bad man. In any case, Yomite talked with Hu Tao a bit and asked her about the kinds of monsters there were in this world, but only got vague answers such as slimies, flowies, hilichurls. He was familiar with the former too, despite her weird pronunciation, but what the hell was a hilichurl? Another tongue twister like that abyssos something? Upon further investigation and a few teasings, she described the hilichurls as cute humanoid monsters with masks, using weapons. Ooh-ha-ha! Assistant Kun, how can you not know what a hilichurl is? You are so stupid! I am dying! She was rolling on the grass in front of the city gates, holding her stomach. You are so silly! The roars of her laughter echoed in the surrounding area. This little, Yomite grimaced. Yomite then saw something out of the corner of his eyes. It was the two knights guarding the entrance. He met them earlier today. For a quite number of reasons, they were slowly distancing themselves from the duo, and Yomite couldn't help but agree with their decision. He felt like he was slowly descending into madness. At this point, it wouldn't even surprise him if someone spread rumors about the new crazy addition to the already crazy Hu Tao. Now there was a duo of crazies. Anyway, back to the hilichurls. Yomite could imagine them being something close to goblins or maybe some humanoid tribesman monsters. As she said, they wore masks and used weapons. In any case, he would have to see hilichurls for himself first before arriving at some sort of conclusion. Currently, Hu Tao was running around the bridge like a wind, chasing after pigeons and scaring them away while shouting, "Take that! I shall fly in the sky with you one day!" They entered the city through this very bridge, starting their adventure on this exact day. It was hard to believe that only something more than an hour had passed, and he managed to experience so many new things, be it good or bad ones. All experiences mattered. Yomite was laying on the ground in front of a river, enjoying the peaceful breeze and the smell of the warm grass he was currently laying on. Yuppie! Yahoo! Hu Tao's shouts from the other side of the bridge could be clearly heard by him. She was like a child. He knew she was definitely at least of age, as it was a common trope in novels and anime for someone to look and act like a child, only to be a 3,000 years old monster virgin lowly granny. He took a glance at her from the distance and groaned. She did help me with that, so I guess I can let her do whatever she wants for a short while. Well, it's not like she is going around setting stuff on fire or something, so it should be fine. He concluded and noticed that there was a boy sitting on the edge of the bridge, looking at Hu Tao with a frown of disapproval. Who is that child? Yomite hadn't seen him before. When they entered the city with Kia, he wasn't there. He didn't know who it was, but he for sure generated an aura of hostility. Yomite left his resting spot and walked up to him with a friendly smile. "What's up, kid? You seem to be troubled." The boy turned around and replied, "Is that person your friend? If yes, please tell her to stop." "Huh? Why? What is she doing that's bothering you?" Yomite was confused. Well, sure, she was loud, but he didn't believe that bothered him. Kids were loud all the time after all. "She is scaring the pigeons away," the boy shouted. "Huh? Pigeons?" Yomite was dumbfounded. Well, the boy wasn't wrong, as Hu Tao was indeed chasing them, but he didn't understand why it bothered him so much. "I was feeding them. She is a bad person for scaring them away." "Ah, kids." Yomite sighed and shouted at her. "Oh, Hu Tao, come here for a second." "Eh? Okie dokie." She swiftly arrived and asked, "What do you need, Assistant Kun? This kid here says you shouldn't be scaring pigeons away, as he was feeding them, as you can see." He pointed to the ground that was full of seeds and grains. Hu Tao nodded and replied with a somber tone, "I see. Her fun was ruined and she definitely didn't like it." The little boy pointed at Hu Tao and shouted, "Hey! You are a bad person! You should be ashamed! Bad! Bad! Bad!" Hu Tao was being hit by a barrage of insults, but she couldn't care less about what a kid had to say. She sat down on a nearby rock and fiddled with her ponytails, fixing them as not to let her hair become loose. "They'll be back anyway. They are birds after all. If you feed them properly," Yomite said while staring at the grief-stricken child. "They do come back usually. But what happens if one day they leave and never come back again? Just like Daddy." The boy started wailing. Oh, alright, you've got to be kidding me." Yomite wasn't good at comforting children, so he turned to Hu Tao, who was still sulking. As he watched the side of Hu Tao's face, she looked toward him with a pissed look that seemed to say, "What the hell do you want?" Ignoring her rude glare, Yomite silently waved at her and whispered, "Hey, can you deal with this?" She, however, averted her eyes to face forward as she put her elbows on her knees and rested her chin on her hands. She was annoyed to the extreme. Why should she stop having fun just because of a random kid? Stupid birds and a stupid kid. Chapter 18. Everything is not what it seems. Yomite knew he had to motivate her a little. "Come on, don't be a little kid. Aren't you the mighty 77th director of the Wanxing Funeral Parlor? Show some of your skills so that I will take you a bit more seriously." Hu Tao lifted her gaze and mischievously smiled. "My skills? Sure. I will show you, just you wait. You will be blown away." The twisted smile on Hu Tao's lips was plain for anyone to see. Yomite had a bad premonition. He already dealt with a blonde-haired crying child that had a breakdown not too many minutes ago. He simply couldn't handle another one, so he asked Hu Tao to take his place. But now he wasn't sure if it was the best idea, as whenever he leaves something to her, it goes horribly wrong. Hu Tao stood up just in front of the little boy and asked him, "What's your name?" "Tim." "Mia. Timmy? Alright, Timmy. Do you like jokes? Jokes are fun, aren't they?" Hu Tao inquired with a bit of a creepy expression on her face. "Yes." Timmy nodded again, still kind of sad that the pigeons had disappeared. "Good. Then do you know this one? Why can't hilichurls climb their tower?" Both Yomite and the child were interested. Yomite especially, since it was about the hilichurl monsters and he wanted to know their habits, or how they looked like. Timmy on the other hand looked troubled but still asked. Because the tower was too high. Because they are dead. And you will be too someday, so go get your 30% family discount coffin coupons, as you will never know when you will be in a dire need of an extra pair for you or your remaining family member," she said while pulling out a few legit-looking yellow discount coupons that read 30% from her robe. Silence enveloped the beautiful scenery. The only thing that could be heard was the movement of the flowing water under the bridge. Yomite was simply speechless. She just said that to a child. Yui. The kid, of course, started crying again. Nothing has changed. She glanced at Yomite and shook her head in confusion. "Whatever should I do, Assistant Kun? He is still crying. The joke was funny too." "Assistant Kun?" Yomite was simply standing there as if he turned himself off. No movement or sound. Simply nothing. It was his fault after all. He knew how she acted, yet he still asked her to be of help. What a moron he was. "You are a terrible person. I hate you." Timmy pointed his finger at her as he cried. Hu Tao shrugged her shoulders and murmured, "Every joke will offend at least one person. Unfortunately, you were the one. It was pretty funny to me." Yomite sighed. Today was a tough day. The first day of his iSky adventures was about to end. The sky was getting dark. A few minutes later, the others will show up and they will go on a quest. Yes, let's go with that. Let's focus on that and ignore everything else. Let's just not talk about it and pretend this didn't happen. Hu Tao, apologize to the kid, please. Yomite was spent. He gazed into the distance, his lips trembling. He had enough for today. Hu Tao raised her hand and spoke in a half-jokingly manner. "K, you can count on me." She knelt down near the crying Timmy and said in an apologetic voice, "I am so sorry. I will tell you a really funny joke if you stop crying." Timmy wiped his tears and snot away while gazing at her suspiciously. "A really funny joke?" Hu Tao nodded. "Yes, it's something related to you as well. I know you must have heard it at least once in your life. It's simply amazing." She laughed just thinking about it. Timmy thought for a second and nodded. Hee. This time, Yomite was facing Hu Tao's back, so he couldn't see the deranged face she was currently making. A face that was unbefitting of her. She opened her mouth and spoke in a low tone. Knock, knock. Oh, who is there? Timmy recognized this format of a joke. It was a classic. His mom told him this specific joke all the time, and he never failed to laugh. Definitely. Cough, cough. Hu Tao coughed as she couldn't hold it in and started giggling. Definitely who? Timmy asked, noticing Hu Tao's expression. Definitely not your daddy. Boo-ha-ha-ha. Hu Tao emptied her lungs and couldn't stop laughing. Laughing like mad for 30 straight seconds without stopping. After she recovered, she glanced at the boy and noticed that he wasn't laughing for some reason. The joke was just so good, so why not laugh? Not funny, she frowned. Rather than happiness from the laughter he should be feeling, Timmy was currently feeling other kinds of emotions. He was wallowing disgracefully, practically drowning in tears. Liquid was pouring from every cavity in his face. Whether it was tears or snot, the child has simply lost it. I hate you! He ran away, screaming and crying back into the city of Mondstadt. The two guarding knights heard the commotion and arrived, but once they found out who was behind it, they quickly retreated back into the city. Who knows what that crazy person might do to them after all? Curse them? Bury them? Sell their organs? Burn them alive? There were all kinds of rumors regarding this person, but one particular rumor was simply the extreme and stood out from the rest. Hu Tao, the director of the Wanxing funeral parlor, kidnapped children and buried them alive in her backyard while saying she was freeing them out of their misery, laughing maniacally. Even the Millilith of Liyue were investigating this matter and found out that it was partially true, but also a bit of a misconception. They didn't explain it to the masses in detail, but people only cared about the fact that it was confirmed. One of the worst rumors about Hu Tao was confirmed to be true. Wouldn't that make the other less extreme rumors about her also true then? Even the retainers of the Wanxing funeral parlor were frightened about the news. Information spread quickly and all around the world. People knew that in Liyue, there was a certain psychopath who was doing whatever she wanted and was getting away with it, without any kind of punishment. That's why people avoided her at any cost. Currently, there was even a book, or rather, a series of tips circulating on the market of Liyue, about things people should always follow when they are in Liyue. A few of the tips were also related to her. No matter what you do, don't make contact with Hu Tao. Don't look at her, don't communicate, just ignore her and pray that you won't meet her at night, sitting on some rooftop, gazing at the moon. So silly, the jokes were funny too. Why the tears? Hu Tao was indifferent. Having lost count of how many sighs he'd made today, Yomite made one more as he decided that Hu Tao was simply going too far. He didn't know what was bothering her to pick on the kid, but she clearly went too far. He grabbed her by the back of her neck and lifted her up. She was much lighter than he expected, or maybe his body was simply too strong and he had yet to grasp how to use a certain percentage of his strength. She hung, her feet dangling in the air. She felt like a kitten grabbed by her mother, being moved somewhere. "Yay, what kind of game are we playing?" she asked while happily swinging her legs back and forth. "You went too far." Yomite spoke calmly. I failed to see how that's my problem though," Hu Tao replied bluntly, her gaze unwavering. "People don't care about me, why should I care about others?" "Hu Tao," the kid ran away crying. Yomite murmured. "We all cry at some point, I did too, but after a while, you ignore, forget and forgive. That's just how mortals are. And that was when Yomite realized that the person in front of him, the person in his party, was a complete sociopath. After a short period of nerve-wracking silence between the two of them, Yomite heard a familiar voice calling his name. "Yo, brother, I see you are getting quite intimate there. I am jealous." It was Kia and the rest of the group. "I am envious, holding her by the neck like that seems thrilling. Lisa groaned with her mature, enchanting voice. "Let's go on an adventure," Amber announced cheerfully while stuffing some kind of plushie into her backpack. It's the bad tattoo and the food thief," a flying fairy announced. She still held a grudge for the last time. And the last member of the group, Lumen, just simply nodded at them in greeting. Everyone has gathered. Everyone was here. Everyone was ready. It was time to go. The teams were as followed. Yomite, Hu Tao, and the leading captain of the first excursion, Kia. Lumen, Paimon, Lisa, and the leading captain of the second excursion, Amber. Both teams had one goal in mind, to stop the flow of the magical power within the temples, and then meet up at the last location and finish the last temple together. Alright, let's get going! Paimon cheered as others nodded their heads with determined looks on their faces. Yomite took one last glance at Hu Tao and had to admit he was wrong about her. He said he could picture her personality within a few minutes of meeting with her, yet he was completely wrong. She was warped, in a different world than others. Sometimes cheerful, sometimes weird, sometimes she had this gaze of indifference. Especially at the moment where she should have felt some kind of emotion, she didn't. He just didn't understand her at all. He didn't know her well enough to judge her yet. Geez, I found myself quite a prick of a companion, huh? Jean watched them leave from within the window in her office as she gazed at them with concern placed all over her face. She let out a small sigh and got back to work. Good luck to all of you. Yomite's adventure was officially beginning. Chapter 19, Meeting Hilichurls. The director of the Wanxing funeral parlor. The name Hu Tao brought fear to many. Funeral ceremonies allowed mortals to leave this world with dignity, and Liyue's Wanxing funeral parlor was said to be painting the last strokes on the scrolls of people's lives in the most respectful way. Traditional funerals included multiple steps such as holding a wake, burial, putting up a memorial plaque, all of which were subjected to strict rules. Regardless of their social standing and level of wealth, all who departed deserved a ceremony that would do them honor. This was the Wanxing funeral parlor's client service philosophy. One would think that such a reputable organization ought to be led only by an individual of utmost learning and sagacity. Yet the heavy mantle of the 77th director has fallen on the shoulders of a young lady like Hu Tao. She has got quite a reputation in Liyue. She was mostly infamous though. Whenever someone mentioned Hu Tao, their neighbors found it extremely hard to navigate the conversation. Whenever someone mentioned her name, something bad happened. Citizens of Liyue had decided to stop saying her name out loud altogether, and instead referred to her as you-know-who. Although she was widely praised for her wit and shrewdness, her eccentric and inconsiderate notions were not as welcome, as she often let her imagination run wild, doing whatever she wanted without a care in the world. Hu Tao was always special. As a 3-year-old, she would read through volumes of classic texts while doing handstands. At 6, she would cut classes and fall asleep in the coffins. When she was 8, she started living in the parlor and learning the etiquette of funeral ceremonies. One would never use the word measured to describe her behavior. She was simply crazy. Simply too different. Simply not of this world. During her teenage years, Hu Tao was tasked with conducting a funeral ceremony for the first time. The parlor's undertakers and consultants were anticipating her debut with their stomachs in knots as if they were suspended over the peaks of Jiuyun Karst. But unlike they expected, everything was going smoothly. Until that incident happened. As the trio of Kia, Hu Tao, and Yomite were walking towards the domain, a silent atmosphere was ruling. Kia was busy looking through a map and didn't pay attention to anything else, and Yomite disagreed with the behavior that Hu Tao was showing, not wanting to talk to her right now. Hu Tao on the other hand was humming a tune, peacefully without a care in the world. Just then, Kia suddenly stopped and raised his hand, indicating his teammates to stop. We are near a Hilichurian settlements. The question is, do we want to avoid them and potentially lose time by going all around the cliff, or should we intercept them? Kia inquired while gazing at the duo behind him. He knew there was some heat between the two of them as his little brother Yomite was looking into the ground, while Hu Tao was avoiding his gaze at any moment she could. It felt like an old married couple fighting. Kia chuckled and continued. Alright guys, then I shall take your silence as a yes. I dislike avoiding fun either way. Let's fight then. Both of them sharpened their gaze at his words. Yomite and his group was about to face a group of unknown enemies, and if it weren't for the dragon that attacked the city not too long ago, he would be quite nervous about his first monster encounter. He silently observed the weird humanoid monsters from within their hiding spot, and he had to agree with himself on this one. These were definitely some alternatives for goblins. The only difference from goblins would probably be the color of their skin and the traditional masks they wore. I will count to 10 and we will ambush them, got it? Kia glanced at them, and they immediately nodded. Preparation and strategy were the key to every battle. 1, 2, 10! Kia dashed forward, leaving behind a dumbfounded Hu Tao and Yomite. Hold on a minute! Where the hell did you leave the other numbers? Ha! Little bro, what's the point of ambushing such lowly creatures? Enjoy your life! Kia shouted and laughed, Hilichurls immediately noticing his presence, but they were far too slow on the uptake as he effortlessly started cutting them down one by one, staining his sword with fresh blood. Hilichurls started panicking and went into their tents to grab some weapons. Despite being monsters, Hilichurls were smart enough to use weapons and in some cases, even magic. Up to this day, no one has ever found out how they could use elemental magic or magic reactions without a vision. They were simply mystery. He is having fun all by himself. No can do. Hu Tao pulled out her polearm seemingly out of nowhere and ran in to help. TCH. Those stupid battle junkies. Yomite clicked his tongue. He pulled out his claymore from his scabbard and rushed in as well. Most Hilichurls had already encircled Hu Tao and Kia, but there was one lone Hilichurl that noticed Yomite's presence. Its two red eyes behind the ornament mask met Yomite's gaze. We hate you, die. Yomite bathed in the monster's overwhelming enmity as he mumbled. What the? Surprisingly, the monster could actually talk, which caught Yomite off guard. The Hilichurl grabbed a nearby wooden club and lunged at him. While watching the strike, Yomite dodged the attack completely. He was confident that he could avoid the attack from the get-go as he could see the movements of his opponent, just as the trajectory of its club swing. So slow, this monster truly is weak. He reminded himself, boosting his confidence a bit, but still staying on guard. These were truly tutorial monsters. Predictable and weak, nothing like a dragon. But even weak monsters like goblins were dangerous in packs. Hilichurls were similar to goblins to some extent. That's why he was still cautious. Yomite knew that his new body was much stronger than his old one, and he could feel the strength flowing through his veins. It feels as if I got some kind of physical strengthening ability from the goddess. I can swing this claymore without any trouble. As the Hilichurl missed its strike, Yomite was about to slay him with his claymore when out of the corner of his eye, he saw another Hilichurl that was hiding up till now, preparing for a sneak attack. I knew it. Damn goblins. He parried the incoming attack with the claymore and poured strength into his left arm, tightening the muscles and sending a punch at him as a payback. And as he did that, the head of the humanoid monster before his eyes exploded like an overripe melon. Huh! Yomite stared wide-eyed at the falling parts of meat and brain matter. Bludgeoned to death at point-blank range, its still fresh blood showered Yomite's face. The Hilichurl's headless body sailed forward and crashed into him, dropping the club in its hands onto the ground with a loud thump. What just happened? Chapter 20, Massacre and Hidden Intentions. Nope, there is just no way. Isn't this body a bit too broken? Yomite thought as he stared at his bloodied and trembling hands. He didn't feel much resistance when he punched the Hilichurl, so he was a bit suspicious ever since the beginning, but to completely annihilate its head like that was beyond what he thought would be possible. The other Hilichurl, who was currently laying on the muddied ground, was equally as scared and confused as he was. He picked himself from the ground and rushed at Yomite as his last desperate attempt to live. The head isn't supposed to just explode like that though, but that's good. If my body is like this, I will have a much easier time in this world. He contemplated as he bent his body downwards and swiped the Hilichurl's feet, keeping the Hilichurl from standing up with his foot, and then stabbing him with the claymore straight through the neck, ending its suffering. It seems like I am done here, but geez, there is so much blood on me. He tried to wipe the blood with the sleeves of his martial arts robe, but the blood on his face had long dried up, leaving him with no choice but to find a pond or a river to clean himself off later. But the smell of blood was disgusting. It made him want to vomit. This was the first time he killed something, so he knew that it would rile up his stomach a bit and make him question reality like in most novels. He glanced at his two teammates, curious on how they were doing, and they were handling their own opponents without much difficulty despite being both heavily outnumbered. Kia knew he was outnumbered, but he wasn't given the title of captain for nothing. He took pride and confidence in his skills. He left a trail of blood and mutilated bodies in his wake, easily besting them. Kia's sword whipped out in two slashing arcs, cutting through the Hilichurl's flesh with ease. Instead of engaging the next, he slipped past him, uncannily fast, fueled by enjoyment and fun. Before the Hilichurl could turn, he jabbed his blade into the space between his thigh and knee. The Hilichurl fell with a strangled cry, and in the next second, was beheaded in a one clean sweep. Whoops, even I felt that one. He grinned with excitement, while running towards another one. Most knights already knew about this, but Cavalry Captain Kia could be as ruthless and unforgiving as the bitter frost. Hilichurl's blood trickled down his coat, making him shake his head in annoyance. You sad creatures, do you not know how hard it is to scrub blood from the white fabric? So lame. He shot out a burst of cryo at the source in front of him, freezing a Hilichurl archer to death. But just in case, he didn't forget to cut him down as well, granting him certainly not a peaceful death. What's wrong? Can't handle the cold? Kia taunted as he faced another onslaught of enemies. During all of this, Hu Tao was also doing her part. The chestnut-haired goddess had descended onto the field of battle. One hand tightly grasping the iron handle of the polearm, the other one holding her precious hat. Spear was a destructive and precise weapon, capable of a long-distance fight with insane reach and speed, and in the hands of someone with vision, it could do miracles. Hu Tao made a small cut on her hand, and slowly, her vision had ignited. The spear became coated in something that resembled a fire aura, ready to burst forth. Pyre pants on fire! Her right arm, wielding the spear of death, whipped sideways, unleashing a fierce fire slash, cutting through 5 Hilichurls at once, and if one looked closely, a small apparition could be seen, fueling the flames. Each swing with her polearm utterly pulverized everything in its path. The shockwave of its might moved down branches and snapped tree trunks before piercing another Hilichurl fighter. The weapon connected with such power it not only split the shield of the Hilichurl fighter in two, but also his torso, turning it into a fertilizer for the forest. Amazing. Yomite commented while feeling the wind pressure from her attacks from at least 10 meters away from her. That was a true fighter. He had plenty to learn. But despite it being his first real battle, not counting the dragon, he did pretty well, and he now had a small grasp of his godlike body strength, so he won't be hesitant to use it more boldly in the future. The group cleaned up the location relatively fast despite it being a huge Hilichurl settlement, and the last living Hilichurl was currently stomped to death by Kia's foot. Why don't you squeal a bit for me? He put a bit more pressure with his foot, almost closing up the Hilichurl's windpipe. Kia liked to do this. It brought him joy, watching them squirm. He took pleasure in watching people's eyes widen in fear, but people weren't the only living beings capable of feeling fear. The monsters and animals were the same. The enemies such as Hilichurls were a prime example of that. Revenge by SS were the Hilichurl's last words before his throat was crushed. Kia turned to the two and spoke with a smile. Good job, good job. That was a fast sweep. Let's check their tents for some hidden treasures or items we could use for ourselves. Hilichurls often pick up stuff they find or steal from people they defeated. They also love shiny things like Mora, so there is bound to be some juicy reward. Yomite and Hu Tao nodded, and after looting the place, they went straight up for the domain. During the trip, Yomite was feeling a bit weird and had this look of uncertainty on his face. Seeing that his little brother was struggling with something, as the big brother, he felt inclined to listen. What's up, lil bro? You looking kinda down? Yomite sighed and replied. Let me just ask you then, as you are pretty well versed with things like Hilichurls. Couldn't you hear what they were saying? I heard some weird bits. Hearing this, Kia stopped at once, feeling his blood freeze in his veins. Is that so? And what did they say? Hu Tao jumped right in and looked at him weirdly. No way, silly. Although I am quite the studious type, I never bothered learning Hilichurlian because the language simply isn't complete. There is hundreds of missing fragments, so it's impossible to understand them. You must be hearing things. Yomite shook his head. No, I could clearly hear it. They said revenge and abyss and other things. Pfft. I didn't take you as the type to tell jokes, but I guess I have to change my opinion about you. Assistant Ku and all that comes from their mouth and is coherent, is just me ye and ye dada. Otherwise they are pretty stupid and their language is dead. Although I do admit they can be quite cute sometimes. Hu Tao snickered. Oh, shut up! Try me again and I will smack you. As I said, I am not joking. It was quite weird. It felt like I was actually killing a person. Yomite had a bad aftertaste in his mouth. At that point, he found the thing that truly differentiated goblins from Hilichurls. Some remnants of humanity? While the two were bickering, Kia was silently staring, as if straight through Yomite's soul. Little bro. Kia walked closer to him, and stopped a few centimeters away from Yomite's face. What is it? Keep your distance, dude. There is this thing called personal space. Yomite was becoming visibly uncomfortable. Kia leaned forward and whispered into his ear, as if he was whispering a prayer. Have you heard of the word Kenria before? Chapter 21, The Temple of the Wolf. Kenria was a nation without a god. It was a powerful nation, built purely by humans, an unprecedented flourishing and glorious civilization. It was the pride of humankind. It was dark and mostly barren of natural life. Yet people at the time were happy with their lives. It was also partially an underground realm, and its natural faunas were few indeed. As such, its alchemy focused more heavily on the creation of life and the overall creation of a new never-before-seen technology. Until an incident 500 years ago, where a couple of gods decided to get rid of it. And so the ancient civilization has fallen, and so did the pride of mankind. Have you heard of the word Kenria before? Yomite felt like Kia wanted him to confirm something for him, but he had never before heard of the term Kenria. Another tongue twister? No. It must be something important this time. He thought for a while and replied, Unfortunately, no. I have never heard of such a thing before. Is that so? What a shame. Kia wasn't buying his words, putting his hand on the back of his neck. I guess some things should be left well alone. He looked up and caught the other's eye silently staring, as if wanting to uncover all of his secrets. A few seconds later, he pulled away and continued. Well then, we had a few seconds to rest, and now, it's time to go to the Temple of the Wolf, he announced, throwing his hands up in the air in a carefree manner. Okay? Yomite didn't understand what Kia's goal was. He was thinking that maybe he could have used his second ability, the Tempest of the story, to learn something more, but frankly, he wasn't that much interested. There were so many new terms and names for everything that he felt like he should take stuff like this naturally, and learn it along the way. He would try to use his ability if Kia asked him again, but right now, there were more important things at hand. Like washing my bloodied face and eating something. 20 minutes later, they arrived before noon, contemplating whether they should camp near the temple, or go in and progress with the plan. After the encounter with the Hilichurls, they hadn't encountered any other hostile mobs, so their journey became a little bit boring. But a smooth sailing was always welcomed, as who knew what was hiding inside of those temples. The entrance to the temple, or rather, the entrance to the domain, was huge. The gate was majestic, and almost felt like it led to heaven. The top of the gate was engraved with 4 leaves sticking out in each direction, and the gate itself had 3 gems hardened in the middle, forming a deformed triangle. Yomite wondered if those gems were worth something. If yes, he might just take 1 or 2 of them once Kia wasn't paying attention. The Temple of the Wolf was a lot farther than the Temple of the Falcon, which the other group was currently busy dealing with. So it was pretty likely the other group would be finishing up things sooner than them, and would already be waiting for them at the last location. Kia gazed at the sky and felt his stomach rumbling. He turned to his companions and spoke. I feel like we should stop for today, make a camp outside and go through the temple tomorrow. Let's put something into our stomach now, and then the next morning we will proceed to enter the domain. How does that sound? Sure, I need to wash my face in a pond anyway. It's still bloody from the Hilichurls I killed. Yomite glanced at the nearby pond, nodding at Kia's decision. It was an alright move. Yomite went to cleanse his face into the pond. The water was cold, yet refreshing. Slowly, he was starting to gather information from all kinds of novels he read, to utilize the best ways to fight, survive, and live the best life possible inside of his head. Fighting while hungry is not a good idea, but overfilling your stomach isn't good either, as it would slow down your blood flow, dulling your movements. He started mumbling to himself as if he was possessed. Alright, so we are taking a break at once, Kia announced once he mistook Yomite's state of out-of-body experience with exhaustion. We have a break? Okie dokie. Let me prepare our food. Hu Tao was happy about the news and immediately pulled out quite a few fruits from her bag. She lined some of them up on a nearby wooden stub and walked up to Yomite, handing him 2 fruits. Here is 1 apple, and 1 big sunset tia. For being a good boy. Good boy? What was he, a dog? Yomite glanced at the apple and the fruit called sunset tia and took them from her hands. Is this supposed to be your form of apology, or what? Hu Tao put a finger on her lips and nodded after thinking it through. Yep. Let's go with that. She rubbed her palms together, generating sound from the numerous rings she wore on her petite hands. That doesn't sound very convincing. He mused as Kia called from behind. Yo! Can I also get one of those? Sunsetias are delicious. Hu Tao reluctantly pulled out 1 more sunsetia from her bag and walked towards him. Here. Almost spiting at him. The sunset tea he was given was disheveled, and almost completely dry. "Ah, don't be so cold, I am literally begging here. My amazing little brother earned himself 2 fruits, yet you only give me 1? Kia was pretending to be sulking. Hu Tao rolled her eyes and replied, "There isn't any more left." "I see." Kia let out a wry smile as he noticed 5 sunsetias and 2 apples lined up on a nearby wooden stub. "Yes, there isn't any more left. For me, that is." Yomite made his way to others, and grabbed Kia's spare knife, which was conveniently laying on the ground next to him, slicing his fruits into small pieces. "Taking my stuff without asking? Well, you can." Kia's loud laughter entered Yomite's ear, making his mind go hazy. So noisy. As Yomite sat down, Kia detailed their plan for the next morning. After a short strategic meeting, they relaxed on the grass in the shade. Truth to be told, each and every one of them were tired and starving, and while sunsetias and apples weren't all that fulfilling to eat, they still tasted amazing. Hu Tao and Kia were tired from using their visions too much, and while Yomite's body wasn't that tired, his mental state needed a bit of rest. Luckily, this time Hu Tao had nothing to do with it. As he ate the fruits, Yomite was slowly getting addicted to the taste of sunsetias especially. "The apples taste better than those in my old world, but this sunsetia fruit is simply unbelievable." The sweetness was exploding on his tongue whenever he took a bite and swallowed. It felt like a mix of mango, kiwi and pears. The weather was mild, and the air smelled as sweet as salt and smoke could possibly smell, and they laid like that for a while, ras-stained and spent. Relaxing like this is not bad at all. I really like this world. Yomite mused as he gazed at the slowly darkening sky, thinking deeply whether the goddess that sent him here was reading his story with bated breath. "She is definitely laughing at me from there, that's for sure," Yomite mumbled with a wry smile. "HWFM? You what caused that?" Hu Tao perked up while nomming on 3 sunsetias at once, stuffing her face, making her cheeks bigger than that of a squirrel. Yomite replied almost reflexively, "Nothing, stop talking when you are eating. Don't do 2 things at once, you glutton." "Oh wait." She continued happily munching on the fruits. "Geez, this was the part where you were supposed to act offended that I called you a glutton." Yomite shook his head, closing his eyes. She simply didn't understand human emotions. Or maybe she did, but still acted like she didn't. He didn't know what was worse. Hu Tao looked at him curiously, and swallowed the fruits. "I see. You are teaching me so much. Thanks, Assistant Kun." A lovely smile rose onto Hu Tao's face. "Whatever." Yomite clicked his tongue and soon the mental exhaustion kicked in. He closed his eyes and slowly drifted away to sleep. Hu Tao gazed at his sleeping face for a while before she settled near him and fell asleep almost instantly, feeling full after eating all 7 of the fruits and showing her satisfaction on her face. "Oh, they fell asleep. It seems like they believe I wouldn't just cut them down in their sleep, huh?" Kia mumbled as he turned his head and peeked through his shoulder. Distantly, Kia heard a wet, rustling sound of slime slowly encroaching on them as he was biting into the dried sunsetia. "This tastes worse than Dialect's cooking," he groaned, moving to sit up. "I guess it's time to clean up. But they sure act like kids, eating up and falling asleep afterward." He drew his sword and gazed at the incoming slimes with hostility. "Don't you dare make a single noise while dying." Creator's thoughts. Chapter 22, Entering the Domain. Somewhere in the middle of the night, Yomite woke up. He raised his head and looked around, observing the only source of light coming from a nearby torch, presumably put there by Kia to keep the bugs and monsters away. "Yo, had a nice nap?" He heard a voice from behind him. He cocked his head and saw Kia sitting in the darkness, less than half a meter away from him. You could only faintly see the outline of his silhouette, but he was there, no questions asked. "Okay man, that's way too creepy, and creepy not in a sense of being scary. There is this thing called personal space, and you are way beyond that." He quickly got up from the ground, staring at Kia with suspicion. "No worries, I did nothing. I swear." Kia laughed. Yomite raised an eyebrow. "Your innocent smile doesn't make it better," he said, dusting his clothes off. Sleeping on the ground wasn't the best thing in the world as his clothes had become increasingly dirty. "Oh, come on, I am not a full-blown bad guy, only to some extent. Some things I say are still very much true. I feel like my dear brother Dialect has wronged me, and now, you are too cautious around me too." Kia cried out with a fake facade and then ruffled his own hair. "Such is the tragic life of the handsome pirate cavalry captain. He grinned, raising up two of his fingers, forming a peace sign. Yomite rolled his eyes. Since when were you a pirate? From a cavalry captain to a pirate. I swear if you don't show me the horses or the ship I won't buy it. Now, don't be mean. Actually, I don't know, I feel like I was a pirate. Ever since I was born, Tehi. A small mistake like that let Yomite immediately figure out he was lying after all. Yeah, right. Yomite looked around but couldn't find what he was looking for. By the way, where did Hu Tao wander off to? I don't see her at all. The little girl woke up an hour ago and silently left. But I am pretty sure she hadn't wandered off too far. Maybe check out the hill that's on top of the entrance to the domain. I am sure you will find what you are looking for. Kia replied and pulled out his sword, chiseling it on a nearby rock. It's almost morning, you two slept like a log. There have been multiple battles occurring during your princess' sleep though. I had quite the hard time. Wait, battles? Yomite looked around the location but couldn't see any dead bodies nor any signs of a battle that took place, nor he could smell the blood in the air. Who did you fight? A horde of slimes attacked us during the night. I am not sure what riled them up, or maybe they just wanted to enter the domain, but we were blocking the entrance. Well, I doubt slimes are even that intelligent. Yomite pondered for a moment. Slimes? Damn, and I was asleep? I wanted to see one, but oh well, they are common mobs. I will have plenty of other chances to get to them. He already had plans regarding slimes for the future. He could use them for quite a number of things. Once he found himself a house or some kind of property, he will definitely make himself a small farm of slimes. The more the merrier. Smelling something foul, Kia frowned as he glanced towards the entrance of the temple. I feel like something must have happened in the temple, as ever since we've arrived, there has been this burning smell hanging around in the air. He crossed his arms and thought. I imagine there will be slimes, hilichurls, and whatever else that is giving Storm Terror extra power. So more fighting then? Good. I need more practice with both my weapon and my ability. Yomite hummed, his piercing golden eyes staring at Kia. The situation seems pretty serious, but could be a bit fun. Oh ho ho! My little brother is quite the brave one, isn't he? I agree it's going to be very lively in there indeed. They are just a disorderly mob of creatures though, so nothing that life-threatening. Kia folded his arms and sighed. It's a pity the Temple of the Wolf has been disturbed by such an atrocity. It was a majestic temple of the mighty wolf, yet now, it's nothing more but a domain overrun with monsters. Yomite felt that this time, Kia was actually sincere about his words, feeling a sense of loss about the poor temple. Maybe he had some connection to it, but thinking that he may feel uncomfortable talking about it, Yomite hasn't asked him anything. The sky was getting brighter as the sun was waking up from within the mountains. He glanced at the top of the hill and sighed. It seems like it's almost morning, I will be right back. Now that it was more bright outside, he wouldn't be needing the torch. He left it behind and went up. Kia seemed to understand what he planned on doing and mischievously smiled. Don't take too long. Yomite saw Hu Tao as he made his way up the hill, sitting atop of the highest point in the mountain in the grassy plain. That cheeky smile coated her face as usual. And weirdly, a flicker of unknown pain passed through him as he looked at the youthful face of his teammate. She was holding her hat in her hands, her long, dark brown hair swaying in the wind, as she stroked the hat in a steady rhythm, gazing at the moon. Her smile was obviously plastered on her face, yet when he looked more carefully, her expression was solemn and much darker than he had ever seen it before. She could sense him coming from miles away, despite him trying to sneak around. Assistant Kun, you're being very shy, why? She turned around as she giggled. I am not trying to hide really, I just came for you. He lied as naturally as he breathed. Taking a closer look at her, he felt like this might have actually been the first time he had seen her without the hat on her head. She didn't even put it away when she was inside of the Knight's headquarters, or when she was in the room with the acting Grand Master. Usually, you would put down your hat as you enter a building, those were the basics of courtesy in most countries. But she didn't. So it was surprising she took it off now, out of all the moments she could choose. It wasn't like they were that much in a hurry, and not like Yomite had something better to do either, so he sat down next to her and tried to strike up a conversation. That hat seems to be quite precious to you. It's my most beloved treasure. She mumbled as she stared into the distance, looking at the floating island of Celestia, hidden within the clouds. 20 minutes later, Kia was getting restless. He wanted to go and kill some monsters, but his two juniors were having fun elsewhere, so he had no choice but to wait. Just then, he saw them going down from the hill, finally returning. "Great, you are finally here. I thought you would bring her after a few seconds. What took you so long? Did you get lost or something?" Kia asked with a frustrated tone. "Yep, the woods are dangerous, and we got lost pretty easily," Yomite joked. "Sure, sounds convincing enough. Alright folks. No one makes offerings to the four winds anymore, yet the old winds never truly vanished." He touched the gate with a sense of nostalgia, the 3 ruby crystals transforming and opening the gate upon his touch. "We need to clear out the temples for the four winds. Let's go in, team." Yomite nodded, and Hu Tao also voiced her agreement. "Right. Okay." Chapter 23, Worries. Kia touched the entrance of the domain, and the mechanism on the door slowly opened up. A streak of purplish light appeared, forming something that resembled a portal to another world, and maybe it actually was, as the moment the trio stepped inside, they found themselves walking on a paved, gray-colored, bridge stylized with a crisscross design. The group appeared in a completely different place compared to what Yomite had in mind. He thought they would be in a jungle, surrounded by trees, but it appeared he was wrong. He looked around and his eyes widened. The whole world around him seemed to be filled with floating rocks and small islands, completely different from the outside world and what he had in mind. The sky was dark, and there was barely any source of light present, other than the torches Kia brought with him. The night breeze felt chilly against Yomite's skin, but it's not like he wasn't used to it. He really didn't know why he was feeling chills down his spine now, but it was probably just the thrill of the current mission, dangerous and new. He was a simple person reviewing books after all, and that's what he loved doing. Now, he was stranded in this world, and while he was happy that he was reincarnated, he knew he should quickly adapt as this would be his life starting from now on. He had massacred a pair of goblin lookalikes with his weapon in bare hands, fought against the dragon, and saved an entire city, all in a span of few hours. Wasn't all of it overwhelming? It was. Slowly adapting, just like when I worked with novels. Yomite noticed that the bridge behind him was completely ruined, and there was no other way but to proceed through the domain. During the tactical talk they had, Kia had explained that they couldn't just leave this domain whenever they wanted to. Either they reached the end, or they will perish in here. There was no other way back. Just that one piece of information was nerve-wracking. Curiously, he stared down the broken bridge and felt horrified when he saw that he couldn't see the bottom. He picked up a rock and let it free fall. Waiting couple of seconds later, he still had yet to hear a sound of rock hitting the ground. It felt endless. It's hella deep, instant death from falling. Although I do have the flying glider thingy, there might be something dangerous down there, and besides, I am not that good at operating the wings, so I would rather not fall. He recalled his previous experience with Harsh falling from the top of the Storm Terror's back and cringed. He definitely didn't want to experience that again. "This place looks pretty," Hu Tao stated, as she ran around, forcing him out of his thoughts. "Were you never in a domain before?" Kia asked, tilting his head with a smile. She shook her head and replied, "I was in a domain, multiple times even, but this one seems to be a bit different from the rest." The road led way to stairs framed by 2 cubics, stone-colored pillars decorated in golden ancient runes. The short stairs ended on a short opening that itself led to a majestic entrance, which was something he thought to be excessive as it could easily fit anything many times bigger than his own above-average height. For example, a dragon. There better not be another dragon, I swear. Looking around he saw that the walls were decorated with different murals and runes which seemed to emit a sense of mystery and wonder. Kia in particular was staring at them as if he was in some sort of trance, caressing the cold walls. 2 blue luminous crystals were situated on both sides of the entrance, which weakly illuminated the opening. Due to the light from the torch he was holding, he was able to see ancient aesthetic pieces of gray-colored architecture and its surroundings. This thoroughly satisfied the curious reviewer's side of his psyche that always wanted to experience the phantasmic sights the MCs of the books he used to review usually experienced. Kia glanced at his little brother and motioned. "What are you waiting for? We are going. If you don't move, we might just leave you here." "Sure, I will be right there." Yomite nodded and answered without missing a beat, trying not to dwell too much on his thoughts, knowing for sure that while Kia loved his jokes, he was very much serious this time. "Good brother, good." His low chuckles filled Yomite's ears, and once again, he nodded his head when a sudden thought flashed through his mind. What if? He sensed Kia's gaze and felt like he wanted something from him. What is it that he wants? What is his goal? Yomite mused. As an experienced reader, or maybe even a normal human being, Yomite knew that he should never lower his guard to anyone, especially when he was out on an important quest like this. He was currently in a party with two unpredictable individuals. While he didn't want to say this out loud, his gut feeling was telling him he wasn't safe. Hu Tao, who was struggling with the understanding of human emotions, and Kia, who was a liar that just smelled like he was full of secrets. Both of them were dangerous in a sense, and while Yomite would gladly trust them with his heart, his guts, and rational thinking didn't want to let go of the feeling of betrayal he might face sooner or later. Although that may be just paranoia speaking from him, after being subjected to the torture of reading through more than 30 betrayal revenge novels back in his old world, his boss told him to look up like 4 months ago. From then on, he felt like he couldn't trust many people. It was astonishing what books can do to the human mind. From this perspective, Kia was already acting suspicious, as if hinting at him to look at the temple properly, to see if he recognized something, which might have been just Yomite's wild thoughts, honestly. Out in the open, in the unknown temple, where all kinds of monsters and traps may be laying around, being an easy bait to every kind of creature. Maybe he couldn't fully picture why, but deep inside, he knew that Kia was the real danger and not the monsters. Once he was done looking around, he proceeded to enter the temple into the unknown, but a sudden thought filled his mind. Oh, we missed the daily quests, didn't we? Damn it. Chapter 24, A Wolf Cub. There's no time to waste. We must crush this domain before there are more casualties from the storm terror attacks. Although it was severely wounded, we never know when he might recover. We need to act fast, Kia stated while remaining cautious at each step he took to avoid traps or hidden enemies inside of the temple. As they moved further into the domain, the group kept wondering just how many more hilichurls there could be. They had already killed 17 thus far, but there was still no sign of any stronger monsters, which led Kia to believe there might be something more ominous at the end of the domain. Ever forward they pressed on, dispatching a couple of hilichurl archers along the way. They soon came upon a section of the domain which must have been the dumping grounds for the unwanted materials. Several bones, chunks of rotten meat, and basic hilichurl weapons like clubs were laid around the area. Kia examined the pile of bones and concluded the bones weren't human. Luckily, it seems like it's just some wild boars. It looks like there were no human casualties, for now, Kia called out. Yomite noted the last part of his sentence but didn't comment on it. Unfortunately, domains like these aren't accessible to everyone as they were closed down due to the danger that accompanies them, but young adventurers always ignored regulations and wandered off into danger while chasing after their made-up adventures. All for the thrill of defeating enemies and finding treasures, they said, only to wind up dead in a dark place, becoming food for monsters and fertilizers for the ground. Proceeding through the domain, once again, silence loomed over the trio. It's not that they didn't have anything to talk about, but Kia noticed yet another group of hilichurls this time. A few of Pyro's slimes were with them. In the middle of the enemy camp stood a mechanical device which was presumably the key to opening the path in front of them, so conflict was necessary. It indeed looked like the only way to proceed was to defeat the enemies and unlock the contraption. Oh, so this is how slimes look in this world. Cute. Yomite thought as he was already thinking of multiple ways he could use them. Let's go. Kia and their group ambushed the hilichurls, instantly decapitating them in a well-coordinated group attack. Even Kia had to admit was perfect, and rushed toward the remaining enemies. The slimes. Yomite raised his heavy weapon above his head and swung it down, expecting for it to bounce away and to immediately dodge if the attack was parried toward him. But to his surprise, the sword entered the jelly without much resistance, and ended the life of the slime in one hit. The pyro slime slowly heated up, expanding, and Yomite could tell it was about to explode, taking a step back to a safe distance. What the hell? Weren't slimes supposed to be resistant against physical attacks and only be killed by magic, or if you managed to locate a core inside of them? What is up with this? He couldn't say he was disappointed as the fight had gone smoothly, and they all cleared up the room in a matter of seconds. But unexpected things like this sure left him questioning his knowledge of RPG games and novels. They weren't special slimes like Slime Kings, mutated slimes, nor demon slimes, so their resistance might have been weaker, but still, in some books even basic slimes were completely immune to physical attacks, much less slime mutations. Ignoring the thought, he watched as Kia stepped forward and touched the device in the middle of the room. The walls next to them started slowly folding and moving in different shapes, opening up a path for them in a form of a gate. They didn't even require a key, and all they needed to do was to just press the button. Upon entering through the gate, they cautiously moved forward until they came to a section that descended from a hidden vantage point. They peered over to the side to see what was below them. "Looks like we are almost out, folks. I am such a great leader. This was easier than X." Hearing that, Kia stopped his boasting. Yomite and Hu Tao knew something bad had happened, and immediately questioned what he saw. "What happened, Kia?" "There isn't another dumping ground," he muttered with a frown. The group had encountered yet another dumping ground, but this time, it was different and completely out of the expectations for him. Intestines ripped apart all around, dyeing the ground in the color of blood, teeth and bones of all shapes, from ribs to the remains of what appeared to be spine. This was where the happy thoughts died off and teasings had stopped. Everything went downhill. Kia sighed as he knelt down and observed the remains. Upon further inspection, he concluded that this time they were unfortunately all human. Shit. He searched around the piles of bone remains and found a few guild tags among them. AR rank 2, 3, and 4, they were beginners and too low-leveled for this domain. Why would they enter? He checked the weapons on the ground but found nothing of use among them. You didn't need a vision to become an adventurer, but it was your saving grace in most situations. Damn it! Yomite bit his lip. He had no connection to those that have fallen, yet once again, a sense of reality hit him deep in the guts. The adventurers were prepared to die, yet looking at the scene, Yomite felt nauseous. There were mostly bones, but there was still half of the body of a person remaining, and it was slowly decaying. The body's skull, limbs, and most of the intestines were missing. Near this body were smaller bones, very little meat stuck to the blackened bones, indicating they had been roasted, possibly while alive. If he were ever to die in action, he begged for a quick death, being beheaded or something, and nothing like this person before him had experienced. Being roasted alive. It sent shivers down his spine. He gave a slight bow towards the bodies of the fallen, and noticed Hu Tao was standing there, without blinking. "What is it, Hu Tao?" he asked, wondering if it was someone who died that she knew. Hu Tao sent a wry smile his way and replied, "I really hate domains, do you know that? Why is that? They are still here. Huh! All of the people that have died here before are still here, trapped in this domain." She spoke, her hands trembling. "Hundreds if not thousands of people are forever locked in here, unable to pass on." Yomite came to a realization. The ghosts. He looked around, knowing he was unable to see anything. He really wondered how the world looked like in her flower-shaped pupils. Maybe he would be able to understand her more that way. "One day, I will enter all domains one by one to purify you all." She started doing hand signs, as if preparing for some kind of ritual, and pulled out a few black talismans from her robe. "What are you planning on doing?" Yomite asked. He was sure that before, when she met him, she used a different color of talismans, so he wondered what she would do now. "There is this thing called forceful passing. Easily to guess from the name, you forcefully make a soul pass onto the other side. It is a forbidden technique we shouldn't be using, as it goes against our principles, but these people deserve it. Their pain is too much. Usually when people die, their soul takes place of a form from their appearance, but sometimes there is an anomaly and they end up in pitiful states. With no hands or arms, unable to move in their ghost-like form. Exactly like those 3 adventurers laying there. Their souls were not formed well, and now they are feeling the exact same pain as when they were dying, and I can't leave them like this." No longer listening to anything else, she put 3 talismans on the pile of bones and focused on the ritual. Yomite observed her serious features and felt that he was once again completely confused about what was going through her head. At one point she disliked people, then it felt like she didn't understand human emotions, and now he could see her wanting to seriously help the souls of the dead. From this weird mix of personality traits he concluded that she distrusted people, as they probably mistreated her in the past. But she cared about her job and genuinely wanted to help people pass on in peace. At least that was the story he understood so far from the rumors he heard from guards and small talks he had with her. Kia walked towards him, interrupting his thoughts. "This ruin used to be a temple devoted to the Wolf of the North. Now the priests are gone, and the temple has been seized by monsters. However, they say that the spirit of the wolf still watches over the endless fields of Mondstadt from someplace else." He muttered while sliding his palm across the cryptic walls full of ancient symbols, trying to ignore the remains of the people who fell here. Such was the life of an adventurer. Unexpected could happen at any time, whether you liked it or not. They waited about an hour and a half for the ritual to finish, much to the protest of Kia, who kept on mumbling about the time that was slipping through their hands. Having finished what she wanted, Hu Tao nodded with a smile and swore to return here later to free all of the souls from here. Without a moment of hesitation, they delved deeper into the crypt. About 10 minutes of walking through empty ruins, Kia suddenly spoke. "Wait," he whispered as he leaned his ear near a wall, taking in the distant sounds. "I hear hilichurls from up ahead, and something else, something growling, possibly a monster." The duo nodded, and Yomite was starting to feel like Kia was a Superman at this point. There was nothing he couldn't do. Although it was only reserved to fighting and battle experience, it was still very impressive. The way he fought was that of an experienced veteran, and Yomite was thinking he would ask him for an advice or tips on holding sword, or maybe proper sword techniques he could utilize. They went deeper into the crypt, and it didn't take long for them to find the source. Inside of the crypt were 3 hilichurls and a chained wolf growling at each other. The hilichurls cackled with clubs in their hands as the beast in front of them snarled. The wolf, with white and blue fur and blue eyes, was shackled to the ground with manacles around each limb to keep it from moving any closer. As Yomite looked at the animal, in the darkness these wolf's eyes seemed to glow, and in that instant, he could feel an unbearable amount of hatred coming from him. So it was an animal making those sounds, poor Wolfie. But what is a wolf doing here? Well, it is the temple of the wolf, but still, Hu Tao questioned, while being reminded of her own pets back at Liyue. She should go and pay them a visit sometime in the future. One of the hilichurls brought its club down upon the head of the wolf. A quick splash of blood hit the floor and dripped from the hilichurl's club, but the wolf did not fall. It snarled once again as it attempted to attack its captors, struggling to remove itself, all the while the hilichurls laughed. Poor Wolfie! Hu Tao tightened her grip around her polearm. Look at the size of it, much larger than a normal wolf, although it still looks to be young. Is that a wolf cub? Yomite drew his claymore from within its scabbard, ready for another battle to save the puppy. Kia, what do we do? I think we should just go and help. Yomite was a huge animal lover himself. From cats to dogs to hamsters, everything cute that could bring him joy was fine, even a snake or a spider. That's why he was furious when he saw how they treated the poor wolf. Wolves were like dogs. Although slightly bigger, but still cute and cuddly. Kia? Without answering, Kia jumped down, landing a heroic entrance. Sorry, little bro. It appears I am a little bit mad, so I need to vent my frustrations. He raised his leg and outstretched it, kicking the closest hilichurl in the right side of its head with enough force that the small body actually flew a few meters, hitting a nearby wall with a loud crunch, breaking its skull. Not even the mask was able to save it, much less reduce the impact from his kick. It was immediately caved in with its brain. At the same time as he did so, Hu Tao and Yomite leaped down toward the landing and rushed in with their weapons ready. The other 2 hilichurls immediately turned their attention toward their direction and saw the 2 warriors charging forward. The hilichurls were too slow to react and were easily slaughtered. Yomite brought his blade in a downward motion, cutting the first hilichurl into 2 diagonal pieces with his huge claymore. Funnily enough, he remembered a quote from his favorite manga. His weapon was far too large to be rightfully called a sword. No. It was larger, thicker, heavier, and cruder than any normal blade. By all accounts, it was no more than a hulking mass of iron. The hilichurl didn't even understand what happened as it was cut in half, before weakly falling to the side, spilling out its inside fluids and brain matter. A cold breeze carrying the stench of blood blew in and made Kia's torch flicker, gazing back at the way Yomite fought. He never understood the big weapons. They had no elegance. As Yomite ended the fight capable of making people feel nauseous, he stepped over the corpse of a hilichurl moving towards the last one. But before he could, Hu Tao rushed in and struck the last hilichurl with the back of her staff, breaking its twisted nose and knocking it to the ground. Before the hilichurl could even register the pain from the first hit, Kia plunged its sword deep into the back of its head before giving it a violent twist. Look how low you've fallen, disgusting, he muttered as he sheathed his sword back into its scabbard. The wolf had stopped its growling and snarling the moment the first hilichurl had been killed, as it cautiously watched the human in front of it. It then turned its head as it heard the sound of the more people coming to join the one in front of him. The moment they cleared out his tormentors, all eyes were focused on him. It immediately tensed up and readied itself to fight once more. Kia, what are you doing? I am going to break the chains. Kia calmly replied as he sheathed his sword before joining his party. The blue wolf looked back at the group and instinctively growled as it took a shaky step toward them. The wolf took another step before fatigue finally set in, and he suddenly collapsed on its side, struggling to keep its eyes open. Blood ran from its wounds from where it had been beaten, stabbed, and cut by the hilichurls and other monsters. For weeks, it endured the torture of the hilichurls, all the while trying to stay alive, not remembering who it was or its purpose, simply used as a tool to gather magic and energy. It witnessed the humans who had entered the domain not long before but were ultimately defeated and consumed by the monsters. Now that it had its freedom once again, it could only lay there waiting to die from its wounds. "It's injured, we need to bring him to Mondstadt at once," Kia urged as he put the huge cub into his embrace, looking a bit hilarious, but now was not the time. "Why are you going so far for a wolf you just met?" Hu Tao inquired. "I feel something quite peculiar about this pup, and to confirm my suspicion, he needs to be healed. We are bringing him with us to Mondstadt." Chapter 25 Primogems. The group progressed steadily through the temple. Kia had the wolf cub in his arms and caressed it so that it wouldn't focus on the pain but instead on the feeling of comfort. They had to hurry both because of the storm terror and this injured cub. On their way, they encountered quite a few traps and hidden puzzles they couldn't pass without the help of Kia, so he reluctantly put the cub into the hands of Yomite, who was overjoyed inside and carefully stroked the puppy. In response to that, the puppy lifted its head and weakly licked his hand. "Cute. We will definitely heal him up. This will be my first pet," Yomite decided while caressing it in a steady rhythm that was comfortable enough for the injured wolf. Kia ended up being one of the most indispensable people on this team, as he could basically walk on the water by paving a path through the water surface, freezing it with his vision. The underwater spikes made the area too dangerous to swim through, but with his help, they got to the other side effortlessly. "Jesus," Yomite muttered, gazing at the water. Kia looked back at him through his shoulder, tilting his head. "Who? No, it's nothing." As they entered another corridor, Kia spoke. "Storm Terror was once one of the Four Winds. I am not aware of the exact details. So if you're interested, you can ask the acting Grand Master about it, but now that it is hostile, we will have to either take care of it or persuade it somehow, which I doubt we will be able to." Killing a dragon, huh? About to get that Dragon Slayer title in the tutorial. He knew that they could potentially do it, it's just how many casualties would it take to do so. The enemy was a dragon, even if it was weakened to some point. There was no telling of what might happen the moment they encountered it again. The dragon was badly injured, and fighting an injured monster that was backed into a corner was the worst kind of monster you could fight against. Some of the people he met yesterday might not live through the ordeal, or even worse, he might be the one to take the short end of the stick. Yomite was still gauging his limits, to see how far he could go before he had to be careful. As they moved on, it was the sound of loud cursing that made Kia stop in front of one of the closed temple entrances, his hand hovering over a mechanism, resembling a doorknob as he listened. He could understand it pretty well since it was partially his mother tongue. The hilichurls were angry about the intruders. It seemed like they didn't take care of all of the hilichurls, and a few of them had escaped, relaying the news to the higher-ups in charge. One? No. 2 abyss mages present. Might be a little bit of fun. He turned to his companions and whispered, "Cryo abyss mages, and a few of cryo hilichurls." Yomite luckily understood what cryo meant. During the small talk they had before raiding this place, a few new terms such as pyro, cryo, anemo, electro, hydro, dendro, and geo were mentioned by Kia, so Yomite had grasped the basics of elements. Quietly, Kia turned the knob and slowly pushed the door open to reveal 2 cryo abyss mages, a herd of cryo hilichurls, and a totem placed on the ground as they bowed down next to it, seemingly worshipping the weird object. That object looked to be their goal. They needed to destroy it right now and then move on to the next temple. He stood in the doorway, watching as 2 more hilichurl archers appeared from the sides, pacing the cramped space, back and forth, guarding it. One of the cryo abyss mages reached his hands towards the totem and clenched it so hard Kia was surprised when the totem didn't actually break from the pressure. Soon enough, some kind of ancient power flew straight into the veins of the said abyss mage, powering him up as a magic shield around him has activated. The magic shield will be a pain. I will leave it to the little girl as she is the perfect matchup against that. Kia sighed as he signaled toward Hu Tao. She noticed the cryo abyss mage, and it didn't take her a long time to figure out what he wanted. She grinned and gave him a thumbs up. Kia's vision was the same element as the Abyss Mage's shield, and that made it almost impossible for him to break through without external help. He could be slicing, using his vision multiple times against the barrier, yet it would barely leave a scratch on it. This was why elemental reactions and elemental counters were highly based on the matchups. Even if you were a godlike entity such as an Archon, it would still take you a long time to destroy an Abyss Mage's shield of the same element, when in reality, all you had to do was to find a Pyro Vision user. The shield would be gone in a matter of seconds without trying too much. Such were the laws of this world. Now then, go in. He signaled her to enter the room and she nodded. She reached for her spear and entered the room. Unfortunately for them, no one seemed to have noticed her as they were either busy praying to the totem down on their knees, or currently facing the other way. Taking the free chance to engage, she crouched down, severing one of the Hilichurl's Achilles' heels with her strike as the Hilichurl buckled in pain. She then lunged at the next creature with a shout and struck at the base of its skull, just as she had seen Kia do earlier. She slashed through the next one, and again, her blow was powerful enough to kill the creature. Noticing her, the Hilichurls were just starting to stand up when a magical red beam shot through the room and hit him in the head. It was her spear. The creature collapsed with a loud rumble to the ground. She effortlessly dodged the incoming onslaught of attacks from other Hilichurls and picked her polearm off of the ground, beginning the carnage once more. Gohas Chiso Vanth. The Cryo-Abyss mages seemed to chant some kind of powerful spell, but before they could finish, a single slash of fire cut both of their shields in two, effortlessly cutting through them as if through butter, making them fall to the ground. The perpetrator was Hu Tao, whose range was basically the entirety of this small cramped room, making her spear deadly for all enemies in sight, but also slightly disadvantageous as Yomite and Kia could be hit in the crossfire, so to avoid that, they were waiting outside of the room, observing whether she needed assistance or not. Watching them helplessly rolling on the floor, Hu Tao laughed out loud and beheaded them, dodging two incoming arrows from the last survivors, the Hilichurlian archers. With another swing she burned them up with her flames, finally cleaning up the place. She turned back to her party and asked in anticipation, "How was that? How was that?" Yomite nodded and replied, "It was alright." Not wanting it to get into her head and act almighty for the rest of the day. That was the last thing he wanted. Kia simply clapped his hands and lamented, "Great, but you should have left some for us. Now I am back to being bored." His gaze then landed on the totem, and with a single swing he destroyed it. The moment he did, a golden chest appeared in front of them, together with the portal they could use to leave the place. "Oh, an actual treasure chest. Let's open it," Yomite suggested. Kia had a thoughtful look on his face and said, "You two divide the rewards, I am rich enough. My pirate bloodline guarantees that I could find million of Mora on a daily basis." Saying that, he picked up the wolf cub and left through the portal. Yeah, whatever." Yomite shrugged his shoulders, his eyes not leaving the chest in front of him. "Well, let's dig in." Hu Tao couldn't wait any longer and opened the chest. Whoa! So shiny! The chest was full of shiny Mora, crystals, and a few weapons. "Let's see, I will take the new claymore and you take the spear, and we can divide the Mora inside." Wait, what's this? He noticed some blue star-like things at the edge of the chest. Hu Tao took a look at them and concluded, "These are primo gems. It's another form of currency, maybe you've heard of it? In any case, they are useless for me as I have no idea how to use them, so you can just take them." Yomite has heard about this special type of currency from the blacksmith's disciple, and he mentioned something about it being used for people with visions. He picked up the 10 primo gems, placing them into his pocket.
Akira here, this is the end of part 1. If you enjoyed the story, we would appreciate it if you liked the video. Also, please support the original author for this amazing work. I have put their Patreon and the web novel link in the description. Thank you and have a great day.